Fairfax Farmers Market today and every Wednesday through the summer at Bolinas Park until 8 o'clock, starting at 4. The Fairfax Festival, that's fun, coming up on Saturday and Sunday, June 14th and 15th. The parade, 10 a.m. as it is every year. Fairfax History Night will take place from 6 to 10 on Friday the 13th at right here in the Women's Club. Fairfax Open Space Committee is going to get 10% off at Iron Springs on Tuesday, June 17th, 4 to 9:30. They're working with the county's Open Space Trust to preserve the beautiful Sky Ranch in the hills above Fairfax. So everybody should come out and have dinner at Iron Springs between 4 and 9:30 on the 17th to help support open space in Fairfax. Anybody else have other announcements? Larry?
Just one real briefly, Mayor. On Friday the 13th, the EcoFest Film Night in the Park is going to be showing Up, which is an award-winning animation by Pixar, very good film, and there should be a couple real interesting shorts to go with it. So Friday night before the festival.
Terrific. Okay, with that, we'll move on to open time for public expression. 3 minutes. Come on up, folks.
Is that on now? Okay, just a real quick request, and that is that we actually ask for people's names and addresses tonight. I really appreciate that. And then I wanted to address council and staff tonight to find out if there have been any significant spills of any contaminants into the San Anselmo Creek that winds through our town, either of sewage, irrigation water, or other contaminants, either last winter or any time this year. For the past 25 years, our families lived right along the creek. This year, I've noticed the absence of several bird species that feed on the steelhead fry that were also until recently abundant in our creek. Those species include a pair of endangered breeding little green herons, mergansers, and kingfishers. This year, for the first time, we've seen none at all. The streamside dogwood that now shades the creek for 40 feet, providing protection, has nothing swimming beneath it, and we're not seeing any in the pools either. As a person who helped in the mapping of the Fairfax Creek system, I'm concerned that contaminants from residents or businesses, either upstream or downstream, may have caused this problem, and I'd like to know if staff or council has any information on this. In previous years, firefighters were washing soap suds, but that's no longer happening. This problem reminds me that we're not only beings who call this space home. There are other beings in this town that depend on our decisions as stewards of the environment for their survival, but they don't have a place at the microphone. It occurs to me that a small group of commercial interests are dictating the quality of our environment, and they're having an effect on the homes of the plants and native animals, as well as the residents and taxpayers. Our current carbon footprint from the increased traffic caused by the thousands of shoppers, I understand over 2,000 people a day come to shop at the Good Earth alone now, the polyester-wrapped bikers who drive here to park their cars and clog our hills and streets, as well as the hundreds, if not thousands, of commuters escaping the standstill traffic in Nevada, zipping back and forth through our town during commute times to rejoin the 101 traffic. According to the Bike Coalition study, the increased trucks idling and polluting along Center Boulevard and increased noise pollution are all causing unstudied health effects to those people and animals living along these transportation corridors and receiving the polluted outpourings of our sewer drains. We now receive up to 25% of our water from the sewage-polluted Russian River. Our sewer lines are exploding into our water systems. We are clearly anything but sustainable. We've exhausted our local resources and are now taking, or as we say, buying those of others, whether it's the concrete and building materials hauled in at great expense or the water from our northern neighbors. I hope that as a town, we can grow our consciousness and learn to be better stewards and look toward true and not superficial sustainability. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, Sierra.
Hi. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in the world right now when I look around. And I want you guys to fix it all. Now. Well, maybe there's something wrong with that and you guys can't really do it for it. And maybe what's going on is we got to do it for us and not worry about folks doing it for us, which seems to be what a lot of people scream and yell about. I'm going to want you guys to endorse me for something in a bit, but I'm going to go into a little bit of a meander rant before I get to that, as usual. I was listening to Michael Krasny on Forum a couple nights ago, and they were talking about climate change and stakeholders and how to get people to buy in and loss of jobs and all this other stuff. I'm also talking to the millions of people watching at home, including the Taliban and everybody else around the world. Hi, Mom. Anyway, climate change and stakeholders. All I can think of with stakeholders is what stakeholders? Us? Who cares? We're so damn human-centric in everything we do. What about every other life form on this planet, and really every other stakeholder, which amounts to a whole lot more than humans do? Where's the voice, or where's the consideration of any stakeholder in any conversation about stakeholders? As far as I can tell, the only stakeholders that count in our world are money and power and property. And when it comes right down to it, the commons of nature are not our property. We can sure own them, we can sure fence them, we can sure destroy them, but it's time for us to start taking count and keeping track of the real stakeholders. That's basically about it. So, in terms of your endorsement, I want you guys to endorse me for president of the world, or dictator, or emperor, because nobody else seems to be fixing things, and I'm ready to do it. And I want everybody to be on my cabinet. Consider everybody on the job now. Just take whatever job you want and start doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else during open time?
I have some copies of Okay, I'm presenting a proposal for a part-time trail steward for Fairfax. As we know, we have 120 trails approximately in town. Only about 30 or 40 are usable at all for going up to open space or evacuating in case of fires. It's long been left to the volunteers to clear these trails, and the work is sporadic and quickly overgrown, so there's no real follow-up, no maintenance, no real attention on the part of the town itself to protect the residents, especially in case of fire. And as we know, climate change has increased our risk of fire. We read every day in the paper of wildfires all over California. And we've been told years ago that Fairfax is one of the places at most risk, which means that our residents are at most risk for their homes and their very lives. In case of fire, we would need to be using the trail system in order for people who live up in the hills to get down quickly. The trails are also used, of course, for walking and for recreation. And kids used to walk to school from up in the like the high scenic road to school on a regular basis. It would take 2 or 3 minutes for them to walk down the hill, whereas in a car with a mother driving them would take a good 20 minutes round trip. So we feel it's increasingly urgent from the point of view, especially of fire, but also for opening up access to open space. Mill Valley, Sausalito, Tiburon, Corte Madera all have restored their trails. The trails were laid out when the town was founded as part of the general plan for the town. But they've fallen into disrepair. They've been taken over by people who live on the sides of the trail. They sometimes aren't even aware that there is a trail there. So we really need somebody who will work to facilitate people becoming aware that there are trails and to begin to use them. And that person we envision would be a part-time worker, so that they would be funded either through the town itself, which would be a really important acknowledgement on the part of the town that they are committed to dedicating, they're dedicated to protecting the lives of their citizens, and or it could be funded through the parcel tax. And through the parcel tax, it would be an increase of a mere $10 per parcel per year. And the attraction of that to increase the popularity of voting for a tax measure, I think would be evident. People want to know about the trails. They want to use them. And Fairfax folks want to bike and walk, and this is certainly something that would facilitate all of that. So we feel it's time for Fairfax to respond to the biggest threat and one of the biggest challenges, and this would be a start. We have the $10,000 in Measure A funds, which are not going to do very much, but they will also be a start. But then who's going to maintain those trails that are cleared?
Okay.
Who's going to look for grants, for example, to get funds from, I just saw that somewhere got funds from.
Let me just jump in
Yeah,
and suggest.
I'm sorry.
And I should have mentioned this at the top. The council is meeting in its first workshop on the budget this Friday morning, starting at
Right.
11, between 11 and 2 here.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the manager. I'll give him my copy, and ask for this to be included in the conversation that we begin
Great.
to have.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Helen Foss, and I live at 120 Scenic.
She's
Road.
also an original member of the
Sorry.
Open Space Committee.
I forgot, yeah.
Could you clarify one thing when you talk about the trails?
No, not.
Most people when hear trails, I think of trails. I just want people to know that she's talking about the actual like easements and right-of-ways through the town and through the neighborhoods.
They're
Okay.
town-owned.
We do know.
I think the council knows.
Thank you, Helen.
Thank you.
Next up for open time, please.
Denise Ferry, 215 Laurel Drive. I just want to second everything that Helen said. I've been working with her on this, and it's a very important issue. I don't want to take any more of your time, but we've laid it all out in the proposal, and I hope you'll all look at it. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anya.
Anya Chandler, 4 Barker Avenue, and I want to take a little bit of your time to just say how much I appreciate everybody that's worked so hard in this, and thank you, John, that the trails, every once in a while I get a little vision of what a pocket we are here and how impossible it is to move. And the trails around here, particularly around my house, really scare me. And we have 4 very elderly people that it's impossible for them to accommodate what needs to be done. And I think, John, you know what's up above my house. It's just like setting kindling for a huge fire. So I would thank you so much for all your time and for your attention to this. Thank you.
It's a labor of love, Anya. Mimi.
Mimi Newton, 130.
And
And Scarlet Begonia, 139 Mono Avenue. I just want to say that the Iron Springs benefit for the Open Space Committee, they're giving 10% of every sale back to the Open Space Committee. So that's why we're hoping everybody will come out. And I realize that the town has a lot of fiscal constraints, and yet I totally agree with Helen that we need to do something about the interior trail network, and that's in conformance with what the general plan asks us to do. So I just wanted to add that and my support for that proposal as well.
thank you, Mimi.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak during open time?
So my name's David O'Callahan. I'm 41 Alima, and I want to repeat the broken record on the zoning changes.
We're going to be getting to that a little bit later.
So that would be a different.
Yeah.
All right, great.
Anybody else during open time? Seeing none, we'll close it. Thank you all very much. Moving on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Could I just ask that we pull item, it's the item on the rents for our buildings. Sorry. 8.
Is there something we could do quickly, or do
No, I think it should just go to the end of the calendar. That's fine.
Okay, then I'll take a motion to accept the whole rest of the consent calendar except 8. 8 will go after 27.
And I've got 2 corrections to the minutes, too. So on page 2 of the minutes, right above where the open time, it says, it was unfortunate that the referendum hamstring the council. That should be hamstrung the council. Somebody, that was a past participle that was missed. And one other quick one, on page 6, on 4th paragraph, stated that there could be a statement about privacy, how long the data is maintained, not the date. So it's the 4th paragraph from the bottom on page 6. Thanks.
Okay, with those changes made, and with number 8 moving on, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Kohler Bragman, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Council reports and comments. John, why don't you lead us off, and let's all be brief on these things.
There's a lot to talk about. Let me see. I have met 4 times since the last meeting with an Eagle Scout whose project is to build some steps down on the top of the Redwood Preserve, the Ecker Redwood Preserve, just to try to get some public access. This is going to be a very steep trail, but we are making a start with steps up there, and that seems to be moving along nicely. Went to a fire meeting in this room where the new fire chief talked to the crowd, and we showed the Peter Coyote movie, and also talked about the trails here that we also heard about on open time. I also went and did some recon stuff around the town, identifying that PG&E has some money that they were going to put towards clearing, and so the fire chief asked me to do that, and I did that, some on right behind Barker, along with a number of other trails that we have that hopefully we'll get some action from PG&E on that. Let me see. I also met with the Trails Committee, Helen and Denny here, to come up with some different thoughts. Went to the Flood Zone 9 meeting at White Hill School, which was very interesting. For those not with this on your radar, is a potential plan for Lefty Gomez and also the land up in Loma Alta behind White Hill School to become flood retention basins. So if that's in your interest, you should definitely pay attention. The first meeting of that is kind of informational. They're going to be doing trial wells, I believe, this summer to see kind of where the groundwater is, to see whether that's possible. I went to a TAM meeting. A number of things happened there, including the final approval of money going for RM2 money going for the North-South Greenway crossing Corte Madera Creek for this bicycle pedestrian access to the ferry, as well as matching funds for SMART to also get down to the ferry. Closed session with the council. And TAM, Safe Routes to School Subcommittee, we basically successfully worked out a budget to keep our very popular Safe Routes to School program running, and I am happy to say it's also expanding as a bilingual thing into the Canal District, which is something that a lot of people have wanted to expand that to. So that wraps it up for me.
Okay, so I also attended the Marin County Flood Control meeting at White Hill School that was held by county staff and Supervisor Rice, and I would urge everyone to get involved and really pay attention to what's going on there. I also attended the countywide public disaster and emergency preparedness meeting on Monday. Attended the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members meeting in Fairfax just last week. I met with Fire Chief Mills to discuss fire prevention ideas and issues and maybe more on the trails. I've also met with Helen Fausen and Denny Ferry about reclaiming some trails using Measure A money, and we contacted the Conservation Corps about possibly doing that work, and this is all in concert with John. So I'm very supportive of the ideas. Once we start opening these trails, we need to keep them open. So with that,
went to the fire meeting here in this room, went to the flood district presentation at White Hill, which that project will be an excavation, I think 12 to 16 feet down. Lefty Gomez would be excavated that deep. A lot of geological and geotechnical issues and practical issues are going to be involved in that project, so that's something folks should keep an eye on. Good news is Marin Energy Authority, the County of Napa is going to be joining Marin Energy Authority, which is a very, very good development for clean energy in this in our region. Really, it's a very good fit for us. As far as the size of the County of Napa. It will actually lower electrical rates for MEA customers because costs are going to be shared by a greater customer base. And there's a lot of opportunities in Napa County for solar so that these agencies can actually start developing their own energy sources and not just buying secondary sources off the secondary energy market. So that's kind of a big deal, and hopefully that'll come to fruition in the next couple months. So that's about it for me.
Renee?
Yeah, so we continue to move forward with the Healthy Youth Coalition, which is forming as a very holistic opportunity for the two cities, so San Anselmo and Fairfax, to partner on addressing some of the really critical needs that we have to deal with youth alcohol and drug abuse. We have probably reached, I think we reached 400 people in a series of 2 evenings, starting to educate and starting to draw together a structure with law enforcement participation and council representation, teachers, principals, parents, students, to come together and start to learn what the facts are and what kind of steps we can take to protect our youth and our water from the pharmaceutical industry, if you will. Attended the Safe Routes to Schools Task Force meeting, learning about the infrastructure changes and all the opportunities that we have to continue to increase and expand our routes to school and to work and about the county. Attended the Marin Organizing Committee's gathering, filled up the sanctuary at Rodef Shalom with folks multilingual, multi-denominational, coming together to try and tackle the issue that's facing the REST program, which is the rotating emergency shelter for the homeless in the county. And they are looking at how to move toward a permanent facility, as April 15th marks the time when their funding ends and the homeless that they shelter and feed ends, and those people are back on the street. Larry and I met in a zero waste committee meeting to talk about Marin Sanitary and some of the changes coming. We did a gray water bike tour with Sustainable Fairfax. We visited 5 sites that are doing incredible water conservation work, gray water systems, rainwater catchment systems. We did it all by bike. 25 bikes fit into 1 parking spot at O'Donnell's Nursery. And it was a low impact, very inspiring day. Attended the flood control meeting, the MCCMC, with the director of the Marin Symphony, who inspired us all as to the amazing value that the arts brings to our community, our schools, our families. The local task force meeting for Zero Waste Marin was today. There's a lot going on. So I have a few more here, but I'm gonna let it go, and so we can start the meeting.
All right, very quickly. It was great for Fairfax to host the MCCMC with Alice Danielle, talking about the role of arts in our communities. There was also a ledge committee, because this is the hot time of the year, as you're seeing in the paper, about legislation moving forward through Sacramento. We all attended that flood zone 9 meeting that Supervisor Rice hosted for us out at White Hill. You forgot. You and I attended the Perry Park celebration that opened up. That was a treat. The chamber meeting was always helpful. There's a nice collaboration between the chamber and whoever serves as the mayor and staff. And finally, John and I went to a fire board meeting as our monthly obligation to see that the JPA continues on its good and smooth flight plan. And the chief hosted an excellent event here showing that chilling DVD, Marin on Fire, which I believe you guys actually handed out so many years ago that Hal Brown bought a copy for us, every member of the community. And once again, I want to thank you for walking through all of our neighborhoods and handing that out. And with that, let's move on to the town manager's report. Garrett?
I don't have a report. Really? Other than thank you for approving my contract.
Well deserved. Public hearings. We're now going to move on to number 20, continued consideration of an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of a setback variance and the application dealing with 130 Wood Lane, all the way almost at the end of the street out there, to legalize an unpermitted carport within the required 5-foot setback. Garrett or Jim, who's going to take this?
Appeal on the carport at 130 Wood Lane. If you recall, you heard this in November, and you continued it to May. We had a full agenda, so we put it on the June tonight's agenda. We had a chance to visit in the field. Both our principal planner, Linda Neal, building official, Mark Lockaby, and myself met with the appellant at the site, and we looked at the structure as directed by you to try to determine what an alternative course of action would be. And we've recommended tonight in your staff report that the applicant be allowed 24 months to come back in with a permit to the Planning Commission for moving it to a location on site that is in conformance with the town code. We think that this can be done in an economic fashion. Our site visit with the building official confirmed that it's his learned opinion that the sewer line running up the middle of the apron of the car parking area would not need to be moved if the carport was moved adjacent to the shed. There's sort of the apron with 2 spaces in the front, 2 spaces behind. It would sort of sit adjacent to the shed, covering one of the 4 parking spaces. It would not remove a space. There's other options available to him, and it would be up to the applicant to determine which application route he would like to go. There's property. It's a wide lot. There's area to the east that he might want to cut a curb cut in and park the long-range parking for this treasured car they acquired there. So we think it's sort of a compromise to give him some slack on when he comes back in. We're also recommending that you waive the $813 use permit fee that would be required. He came in from the cold in August of last year to the Planning Commission with the use permit and variance application. It was denied, paid the fees then. He's paid the $500 appeal fee to be here tonight and last November. And so we're saying, in the spirit of cooperation, give him a comfortable period of time to come up with an alternative location and come in free of charge to go back through the process from the beginning the way it should have been before this unfortunate error was made. That's it.
So the last time you were here, wasn't there like a baby in the offing?
Yeah, he's here. Well, he's not here yet.
Well, just remember, when you come back in 24 months, you get us and a toddler.
That's
Good
right.
luck on that one. Any questions of staff on this one? Well, with that, do you have anything that you would like to say other than that we're continuing this and giving you a break from the heavens?
I appreciate the break from the heavens. I was still hoping we could get the variance to leave it where it is because it's a $5,000 tag to move it, regardless of where it goes.
We'll see you in 24 months to discuss it.
All right.
Let me see if there's any public comment. Folks want to talk about this? Come up to the podium. Seeing none, with that, the direction is to, or the recommendation from staff is to allow the applicant the 24 months to apply for the required use permit with the fees waived to move the carport to a conforming location. Is there any disagreement with the staff recommendation on this?
I think just one clarification. It says, and if the applicant does not proceed with the proper application within 24 months, that the carport structure be removed immediately thereafter. So it's not a continuance to be discussed in 24 months. It should be completed within 24 months.
Okay, got it.
And I would agree with that.
Okay, well, with that, there we are, and there's the munchkin.
Thank you. Appreciate
it. All right, thank you. All right. And we'll take a motion. I think I've read the motion. Do we have a vote on the recommendation?
I'll make a motion with the clarification that I provided.
And actually, for just further clarification, is it that the application for the permit would be submitted, or that the work would have been, the application would have been submitted? Got it.
Relocate.
Got it.
It says, allow the applicant 24 months to apply for the required use permit with the use permit fees waived to relocate the structure in compliance with the zoning ordinance. And if the applicant does not proceed with the proper application within the 24-month time frame, that the carport structure be removed immediately thereafter.
Okay, I'll second.
Good, all in favor? It's unanimous. All right. Moving on to the regular agenda, and I suspect the main reason why everybody's come out on this warm evening into this hot room. Number 21, to discuss the status of repeal process of ordinance number 778, which among other things rezoned properties from CH to CC, added new PDD, zone properties and rezone properties PD, and direct staff as appropriate. Let me suggest how this might work this evening. First of all, the council is not taking any action tonight. There's nothing before us requiring us to do anything. What we thought we would discuss is, well, of course, most importantly, give all of you the opportunity to speak and share your thoughts with us. But we thought it would be helpful, because not everybody is with us every step of the way. Some people are following us, a few months into the process, that it might be very helpful, particularly, Jim, after reading your staff report for the Planning Commission the other night, which really went very briefly into almost a month-by-month synopsis, that it might be helpful for the community, even for those who've, been sitting through this month after month, for Garrett to very quickly take us through each of the steps and what brings us here tonight. So Garrett, with that, if you'd take it off.
Okay, so as the council may recall, this first started, the council had a public hearing in February 13th, to introduce ordinance 778. Now, as a little background, you may recall that the impetus for the Planning Commission to have a special meeting and the council to have a public hearing on the item was really related to the need caused by lack of controls over formula stores in the CH zone. And so at that time, based on the discussion we had related to a gas station, that the issue came up that we would like to facilitate converting the CH to CC, which has controls over formula stores. So with that, we proceeded ahead, and in preparing the ordinance, staff, along with legal counsel, reviewed all the documentation and then recognized that the zoning map that was a part of the general plan was approved by resolution only, needed to be approved by ordinance, and thus, as part of the action to rezone CH to CC, we also determined that we should take other actions to bring the zoning map into compliance, and that's why we added the converting 4 properties to PDD and 20 or so properties to the PD zoning, plus other technical amendments. So that's how we got there. Now, going back a little further is, on March, the Town Council actually adopted Ordinance 778. On April 2nd, the council was actually, on the agenda, was actually planning to reconsider the second reading of Ordinance 778. However, you may recall a referendum petition was submitted prior to that meeting, so the council could no longer take any action on that item. Now, on May 1st, the town's election official did report to the council that could not certify the petition, and at that time, Ordinance 778 took effect. Now, just last month, on May 7th, the council considered the repeal or all of a portion of Ordinance number 778. The council decided that it wanted to repeal the entire ordinance and thus directed staff to do so. Now, the process to repeal is the same process to adopt. So what that requires is the repeal must go back through the Planning Commission and then to the council. Now, in order to expedite this, we just had a special Planning Commission meeting last Thursday, May 29th. At that meeting, staff reported that the council's desire was to go ahead and start the process to repeal the ordinance. Staff indicated to the Planning Commission that the goal, in essence, was a fresh start. By repealing the ordinance, the thought pattern would be after the repeal is completed, the council then could go back through the process, take the zoning action separately, along with zoning text amendments. That would allow the council to perhaps address the issues and concerns raised with the initial ordinance. Planning Commission's meeting, I believe, took over 3 hours. They heard comments from about 30 residents, members from the community. At that time, the Planning Commission has made a recommendation to the council to not adopt the ordinance to repeal Ordinance 778. Now, what's going to happen is at the next council meeting, because it has to be a public hearing and duly noticed, on July 2nd, that matter, the repeal of the ordinance, will be brought to the council for consideration. So, as a reminder, as the mayor stated, tonight's meeting, there really is no action. Really, the item was placed on the agenda to allow the public to comment on the repeal and other related issues because we knew it was a great interest to the community. But again, there really is no action to be taken other than to consider public comment. On July 2nd, the repeal matter will be before the council for consideration. And so with that, that concludes the staff report, as well as the town attorney is also available to answer any questions.
Yes, before we move on to the town attorney, who will be updating it on the writ proceedings, I want to see if there's anybody on the council that wants to ask Garrett any questions at this time. Okay, seeing none, Janet, would you be so kind?
Okay, we answered the writ that was filed on May 6th. And we answered it last Friday and filed documents in court to respond to it, suggesting that the proper way to fix or cure the referendum petition was to file with the town clerk, with the elections official, affidavits that the circulators were in fact over 18 years of age. And that actually happened on Monday. So now the proponents of the writ have filed with the town clerk affidavits, and she is examining those. Should those turn out to be adequate and sufficient, then her next step would be to certify the referendum petition to the town council. And that would be coming before you potentially on your July 2nd meeting.
Any other further thoughts?
No?
Okay.
You know what, can I just
Please.
ask that we try that one more time in a way that I'm really afraid, because as I listen to it, even though I know it inside and out, it's a little bit hard to untangle everything and all the information you just gave us. I imagine if we could go to the public right now and ask if they had any questions, there would be quite a few. So I don't mean to put you on the spot like that.
That's okay. No,
I heard you, but I really want to make sure going forward that the people who've come and done so much work to try to understand this can really understand step by step what we're doing.
Okay, so there was a court action filed, a writ filed on May 6th, basically saying that the elections official, the town clerk, needed to certify the referendum petition. And we are required to respond to that. And so we answered. It's called an answer. We answered it last Friday, filed documents in court. And we also suggested, though, that the writ was premature and not the way to correct or cure the defect in the referendum petition. And the way to fix it or cure it would be to file with the town clerk affidavits that the circulators were in fact over 18 years of age. That's what was missing from the referendum petition. So that did happen on Monday. There was a submittal to the town clerk of affidavits. 43 affidavits were filed with the town clerk on Monday, 2 days ago, stating that all of the circulators were over 18 years of age. She is now examining those, she's looking at those, and if those are correct and everything is in order with those, it is likely then that she will certify the referendum petition to the town council. What that means is that the referendum will come before the council at some point, probably July 2nd, and I'm assuming everything is in order here. That's a big assumption, so this is just the course that will happen if everything is in order. And that will come before the council on July 2nd for a decision, and by statute, the decision is to either move to repeal, to start the repeal process, or put the matter on the ballot, on a ballot. So that will be the decision that will be before the council, most probably, eventually, probably on July 2nd. Is that clear? Better? Okay. I'm getting there, huh? All right.
Well, quick question, Garrett. One of the issues that's been raised is we're going to have a community meeting. Have we settled on the July 12th date?
No, I think we're still determining if council members are all available on July 12th, is my understanding.
Well, we're all here. How's everybody's calendar looking?
Well, before we even look at calendar, I'm just wondering if, considering the fact that on the 2nd this will be certified to us and we'll be faced with a decision, potentially it is some decision to decide or not to decide, there will be something before us that we have to say on your behalf. I would like to put out there a motion that possibly we try and get that public workshop, which is supposedly what this is all about, is not having had the opportunity for people to, one, understand, and two, to be heard, that we put that in on the 2nd, that we do this, that Michelle can certify it to us, and we can throw a workshop opportunity there, and do the public hearing for the budget, and then we can move to the special meeting to go forward.
Let me suggest whether I don't think that's a good idea. We do workshops. The style of the workshop is, I think, conducive to this electricness that we feel around this issue. Instead of the rather structuredness of council meetings, even if we were to remove ourselves down to the dais and all of that things, and the budget and all the other things that come up, sort of cut against the grain of what I think that meeting is really for, which is for all of us to sit around and spend a nice Saturday starting at, let's say, 10 o'clock with no end time, and just be able to discuss, as long as we have to flesh this out and have it out of our system. I really think, now I know the July 2nd date has been mentioned by council, but we also have a meeting set up for the 16th. So there is the opportunity to receive whatever we receive, if we receive it from the town clerk, and then consider it, have a conversation about that, have our meeting on the 12th at great length, and then bring it back for conversation at our regular council meeting on the 16th. Having sat through workshops for 8.5 years, it's really sort of a really good process, a relaxed process that allows, really people to speak, not for 2 or 3 or 5 minutes if they're a group, but to speak as long as they want, to really get their ideas out and to have conversation. This is a very, it's governed so carefully by Brown Act concerns and other things, and government code provisions. The workshop is just, I think, a unique Fairfax experience, and that's why we go with it.
Mayor, I just want to put out there that I think it's very important before we make any decisions, and I hear you about the better setting for a public workshop and the tone, that we make sure that we've heard the public and that we've all had that opportunity before we make any decisions.
Thus, the 16th is that great. We have these 2 meetings that are scheduled. Remember, when we set up the whole schedule for the council meetings throughout the entire year, we generally don't hold a meeting in that very beginning of July because folks are leaving for vacation and other things like that. It's just a very short week. We're using that, we brought that date back because of the specialness of now. But we really were going to have our main council meeting on the 16th, and that, sort of ensures that folks are coming back from the July 4th holidays and will be here.
Can I just interrupt? I'm not available in the morning of the 12th. I have a prior commitment, so I'm happy to meet in the afternoon. And I don't think we should really be having this debate up here right now. I think we ought to move on to public comment about, their concerns about the possible repeal, the rezone. I think that's why we're having this, so I don't think it's our
I hear
time.
you, but I think it's very important when we have the audience and while we have folks watching on TV that we settle on that date so they can set their calendars. And also, the manager has agreed that we're going to purchase a banner and put it over Sir Francis Drake so that as many folks as possible can possibly know that our meeting. If you can't make it and you want to start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the timing isn't as important as our selecting a date for that meeting. So I'm asking the council, if you have your calendars with you, how are we doing on the 12th?
Could I just ask a question of council before we start setting dates? We set into motion a repeal process which went to the Planning Commission on the 29th. So my understanding is that in order to consider that process on the town council or with the town council, it's going to have to be noticed again. So my concern is if those notices have already gone out, I don't want to start playing with dates. I don't want to run up extra costs renoticing, sending out 2,000 notices. So if we could just get some clarification on the whole notification aspect of this.
We send out notices 10 days prior to the meeting.
So it hasn't been done?
No, it hasn't been done yet. Mainly
Okay.
because we need to know when it's available to be certified.
Okay, so we have, okay, well, that's fine then. No, I am talking about that whole repeal process, which,
I think, council
I'm sorry.
member, I can say, we would have a public hearing for you to consider the repeal.
right,
At the next meeting, you need 10 days' notice, and we're well away from 10 days
Right.
from July 2nd.
okay, so
So
that.
nothing has been noticed.
Nothing has been set yet,
No.
okay.
1 o'clock on the 12th?
I need
I
to
can make
check
it.
my calendar.
Hold on.
Okay. This is June 12th?
July 12th.
Sorry. Oopsie, okay. I can't seem to check my calendar, but I'm just going to assume I'm good to go, so.
Okay. On July 12th, at 1 o'clock in this room, we will have that community meeting on this issue. Garrett, buy a sign, hang it up. All right?
And what day of the week is that?
Saturday,
This is Saturday.
1 o'clock?
1 o'clock. Okay. With that, let's start the public process. Please, everybody come up, take 3 minutes, 5 minutes if you're a group, and share your thoughts with us. Lou.
Yes. I would just like to speak a little bit on item 21, where you want to rezone this property possibly to PDD. This is across the street from my house. And I don't think it's proper to do this unless you can notify all the people within 500 feet of this property so that these people can come up and speak on this, because this is going to cause a regular traffic jam of cars going in and out of that property. You could put in up to 30 units in there, and I think the people in the area should be notified by mail so that they can come and speak on it.
Could you speak, Garrett, to the notification process that would be part of this, as well as any future building that would go on there for that affordable housing site?
It's 300 feet from all the affected properties.
And what
is
do
what
you
we
send
send
out?
written notices out.
You
We
send
send
out
them out a
written-
notice of the public hearing and the item.
I didn't get what he said.
One more time.
We send out notices 10 days prior to the meeting with what the topic is, and we send it out to all the properties within 300 feet of the affected property.
Everybody within 500 feet of the...
Sure.
Lou, that actually happened in, can you hear me over here, Lou?
Pardon?
Lou, it's Jim. So that happened in January when the Planning Commission first heard the adoption of 778, the ordinance rezoning 10 Olima to planned district development. It also, there was a 10-day public notice that you were noticed on in March on the first reading of the council. And then you were also noticed in April on the second reading of that action. And it would have gone into effect, no, excuse me, I'm sorry, February and March you received public notices within 300 feet for the rezoning of 10 Lima. The same thing is going to happen with the repeal. Last week at the Planning Commission meeting, there were notices sent out within 300 feet of repealing the ordinance. And there'll be the same thing happening on presumably on July 2nd, and then in August on the second reading. So that has been occurring, and it will occur.
Okay, thanks.
Next. Please line up so that we can move this along. Yeah, we do. And let's go with your name and address. It's a very good idea to do so.
Might I just say really quickly, excuse me, my understanding from looking into the address statement requirement is that there is some protection for folks who don't wish to share their address. Am I correct?
You cannot require that anybody provide their name and address.
Okay.
Okay.
Just for the record, thank you.
Then let's just go with, just step to the podium and give us your name.
Hi, my name is Fabiola Marquez, and I have heard for translated everything, but I would like to talk about the housing, and I'm a single mom, but she's translated everything in English. So, estoy en este meeting porque sé que van a tocar el punto de vivienda digna.
So I'm in this meeting because I know you're going to talk about dignified living, dignified housing.
Estoy
speak in the
preocupada.
microphone?
You know what, I'm going to flip you. If you could stand on the other side of her, because we want to get her verbal statement into the microphone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sé que estoy muy preocupada porque se trata sobre la vivienda y tengo 3 hijos.
I'm very concerned about the housing here in Fairfax. I have 3 kids.
Todos han ido a Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center.
All my kids have gone to the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center.
Soy una mamá soltera latina
I'm Hispanic Latina mom, single mom.
y estoy preocupada porque el no poder pagar la renta me afectaría en muchas cosas.
In order to not be able to pay my rent affects many things.
La primera sería pues el no poder trabajar.
She can't work.
Porque el que mis hijos no puedan ir a una escuela digna
My kids can't go to a dignified school.
y que no tenga el cuidado adecuado para mi hija de 4 años.
I won't have childcare for my child of 4 years old.
Vivo en Fairfax por 6 años
I've lived in Fairfax for 6 years.
y me gusta vivir aquí porque me siento segura, ya que soy una mamá soltera.
Because I'm a single mom, I like living in Fairfax because I feel safe.
Y además porque pues tengo mis hijos en el área, en las escuelas y en el childcare.
And also because I have my kids in the school and childcare.
Pero mi preocupación es grande porque siento que no voy a poder pagar las rentas, que cada vez son más caras.
My worry is big because I have a huge worry on my shoulders because of the rent that keeps going up and up.
Y pues me gustaría que consideren la propuesta de housing.
I would like for you to consider the housing ordinance and the housing element.
para las familias que vivimos en Fairfax de bajos recursos.
That for families that live in Fairfax with who are low income or lower income.
Y les pido por favor que lo consideren. Gracias.
And I hope that I ask you that you consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, may I interrupt one more time? Excuse me. We haven't done a lot with translation, which we're seeing. I think it's really important that the Spanish speaker or the person speaking the language that is not English also speak into the microphone. This may take another couple of minutes, but it's really important because this is going beyond this room. So please take the time and don't rush and don't worry. Everyone has a right to speak here. It's absolutely vital. So please take your time and don't be nervous.
Okay. Did you want to speak separately?
I will speak separately, and then I'm also going to speak for another person who did not feel comfortable coming up, and she has her statement in Spanish, and I'm going to read her statement in Spanish. Her statement's written in Spanish if you guys want it, and it is written in Spanish, but I will be reading it in English.
Great. Thank you.
So, I'm from the United States. I've lived in the United States for 10 years. I have lived in Fairfax 3 years. I like living here. I like the people that are in this town. My kids like the schools. I work for 3 families here in Fairfax and in San Anselmo. My support is for the construction of a building to help people, to help seniors. I think it's a very good idea for them. And I think it's good that we look at bettering the construction here in the town of Fairfax as well for our security. In Fairfax, we have a growing Latino community, and I would like for also not only cultural workshops for our community in Spanish, but also the workshop about housing to be in Spanish as well. For families of low income, I think I think for families that are low income, I think all the changes are for the better, and that we live better and in safer environments as well. So the request is for also that the workshop be in Spanish as well, to be inclusive of the Latino community that is here in Fairfax.
Are you available?
I translate. I'm not available July 12th. I will be a little busy, and I know about 10 people that will be with me on that day. I'm not available. I do know that there is a translator here in the audience who is a certified translator who would do a much better job than I would do.
That person should speak to our manager during the break or sometime this evening.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
And then I'm just going to read into my statement. Last week I talked about my experience living here in Fairfax. I just want to add that I personally, my name is Michelle Garcilaso, I live here in Fairfax 200 Bolinas. That originally I moved to Fairfax because of the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center. My kids were going there in order to continue having childcare. We needed to live here so they could be picked up from school, from the Ross Valley schools. But I've always loved the town of Fairfax and happily and excitedly moved to Fairfax, and we've lived here now for 3 years. I want to continue to raise my family here in Fairfax. Some of the people who signed the petition and some of the opponents of the position, they say that those who may benefit for the creation of more housing units, that they're not part of the town of Fairfax. I can wholeheartedly say that I and the families that I know, Fabiola especially, we're part of the town of Fairfax. We love Fairfax. We want to stay in Fairfax. As I said last town council meeting, I don't have a huge amount of disposable income, but when I do, we go to Scoop, and to get a $2 ice cream at Scoop after a Little League game is, not a big deal. That we can do, we can do. When we can and we have some extra money, we go to M&G's. We don't have a lot of money, but whenever there's an event supporting the schools here in Fairfax at Iron Springs Give Back Tuesdays, we go and try to support as much as we can. I will also say that Fairfax is a great, giving, kind community, and the only reason why my kids are able to be a part of Fairfax and to be in Little League and to be in soccer and really be a part of the community with their friends at Manor is because of the scholarships that the community offers. And my husband and I will do anything to help support the Little League and the soccer and go to games all the time. But for those who, I think the general comment is for those who say that this housing element will bring in huge housing and people who aren't part of the town of Fairfax, I highly doubt that. Fairfax is a very unique community, and I think the people who live and who move to Fairfax want to experience living in Fairfax, living in a small community. I will also say that I know a lot of families at the Children's Center and in my apartment building who continually have to move because they can't afford to live in Fairfax. So that's my comments.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. And please, if everybody could line up just a little bit so we can.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Marino Guastucci. I am a resident and have been a resident all my life at 30 Creek Road.
Folks, we had a little statement from council. You don't have to give your address.
Oh,
but
sorry.
that's okay.
I didn't hear that. I grew up in Fairfax all my life, and you know, I've seen this town change in many ways. My son here, who's almost 5, is living in the same house that I grew up in because of circumstances related to unaffordable housing. Just several years ago when I was still with his mother, I remember our 2-bedroom apartment was $1,200. I don't think that I could find anything 2-bedroom in Fairfax for less than $1,700, $1,800. Growing up here, seeing this town slowly progress and become more busy, I've seen the busier the town has become. I've seen the less character stay around. I've seen the trend and the publicity of this town and the popularity of this town increase, and I've seen the community and the character deteriorate from this town. It really takes a community to have a family, to have organization and structure, which really works for people like myself, who, even though I make decent money, I work for my family's arboristry company. And though I make decent money, it's a struggle. It's a struggle with the increase of costs, the increase of living, transportation, and it's unfortunate because I know that this town was built with a lot of character, and the characters that live in them specifically. I remember growing up in so many faces. I don't see those faces anymore. Unfortunately, I've heard such things as the property value in San Francisco increasing and the incentive for those people to move out. I think that there should be an incentive for the people of this community to stay. And, it's been my experience that I've seen this town become way too busy for people who have low-paying jobs, people who even make decent money, that they can't slow down and enjoy and be a part of this community anymore because it's such a struggle to survive in this community. And I find that very sad, and would only wish that my future generations, such as my son, could be a part of this community like I was. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If you have something for the clerk. Right here. And if I see the letterhead, and I forward it on to the manager, who forwarded on to all members of the council.
Great, thank you. My name is David Grable. I'm a lawyer representing people. Sorry. Name is David Grable. I'm a lawyer representing people who need affordable housing in Fairfax and other parts of Marin County, Sonoma County, Napa County, some other areas. Affordable housing, as you know, is extremely difficult to get approved, to get built in Marin County. For reasons that are very puzzling to me, a lot of people are opposed to any kind of affordable housing in this county, a very liberal county, a progressive county in a lot of ways, but talk about diversity, talk about low-income housing, to meet the needs of some of the people who work here. Some of the 60% of the people who work here who commute from other areas, other counties, because they can't afford to live here, that's a big puzzle. The letter kind of speaks for itself. It wasn't clear to me what direction the council was headed with this, whether you were going to actually start a repeal process yourself or let it go to a referendum. I would urge you to let it go to a referendum and not do anything to repeal this ordinance yourselves, because if you do that, you're going to open yourself up to some liability as set out in this letter. That's contrary to your housing element. It's contrary to Government Code 65008, which says cities can't discriminate against low-income housing. It's contrary to state and federal fair housing laws. There's a lot of good reasons, and I don't want to saber rattle as a, we're going to sue you or anything, but you're much better off letting this go to a referendum. Now, well, if it goes to a referendum, what does that mean? Does it mean, can we do by referendum what we can't do by amending our housing element or amending our zoning code? And the answer is no, you can't. The people of Fairfax cannot discriminate by referendum or initiative against protected classes, or can't violate state laws by referendum that you as a council couldn't violate. So if that happens, hopefully the voters of Fairfax will not allow it to happen and will vote it down. But if they approve it, then there's some legal remedies there. So I'd urge you to try to talk sense into some of the 1,000 people who signed that petition. Affordable housing and diversity are an incredibly healthy thing for a community like Fairfax, and this project is well designed, is much needed, and I hope it goes forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Neighbor.
Yes, I'm Jessica Green. I live at 154 Ridgeway. Even people that own houses here are not rich. There's plenty of people suffering in all of, different situations. I don't think the people that all signed that are against affordable housing. I also don't think that that affordable housing is going to mean that your child and your parent is going to get to live in it, because there are thousands of people waiting from all over the place that are on lists that have nothing to do with people that are living in Fairfax or grew up here or anything like that. I think you can't ignore 1,000 people that signed that. Maybe a few of them didn't realize something about it, but most of them did. Now, 1,000 people is a lot of people in the population of this town, and they're not all against affordable housing. But I mean, you guys said yourself that, well, I think that that you guys should just trust in the people that that you elected to make your decision. You said that in one of the meetings. I've got it recorded. And I think that, now you're talking about workshops. Oh, it'll be a nice workshop. Let's just pass this through. It's got all kinds of mistakes in zoning. I don't think most people are against that Lutheran church development and stuff, but there was a lot of different things you guys rezoned, and I think it's something to be considered, and I think you can't ignore those 1,000 people and just wipe them out. Somewhere I read there was only about 2,000 legal voters in Fairfax. I don't know if that was true, but it was in the paper. I think that it's something to be considered, and to trust that, okay, we're going to pass this through with all its some mistakes in the zoning, and assume that everything's going to work out fine because we're going to go this nice, relaxed workshop. Is why not just fix it before we pass it through? That's what these people voted for, and I think that their voice should be heard and not obliterated, and we're not against affordable housing, but we'd like this thing done right when it passes, so that later you can't say, oh, well, but this passed, and, that's the way it is. I think it's hard to trust when you say, well, you should just trust us because you elected us and we should be able to make your decision. And now you're talking about a nice, relaxed workshop where we're all going to have some input. But in the meantime, we're passing through an ordinance and rezoning and everything. And it just doesn't seem like a good idea to be in a rush to do that. Let's have a nice, relaxed look at the zoning and do it right. That's what I have to say about it.
Thank you. Sierra. Be serious, Sierra.
You know me, David.
Spring's eternal.
I'm extremely serious about what's important, and that's basically the air, the water, and the soil. That's important. Everything else, our whole society, our laws, our rules, how we drive around all over hell and back, how we consume every living environment and turn it into concrete landfill, that's serious. I'm off the wall and I jump around and everything else because I don't know how to handle the rest of it, okay? Anyway, my name is Sierra Salen. I'm a resident of Earth. I may live in Fairfax, but I get up in the morning, I look at the air, I look at the water, I look at the soil. What else matters? I was in San Rafael yesterday, and I noticed a sign on a window in a building that used to be my dad's print shop when I was a kid on B and 2nd Street. Anyway, I'm looking at it, it says, there's a planning commission meeting, which was last night, and they didn't have the plans in, so it didn't make the agenda. But anyway, what's proposed there is a 4-story building. Point being, San Rafael when I was a kid was a small town. You could walk around, you could ride your bike without getting hit. You take your life in your hands crossing the street in San Rafael. I call San Rafael the city with no soul, the car-centric city. There's more people, and we all have to live somewhere. What I said earlier today, it's like we have a problem, and we want you to fix it. It's like there's something wrong with that. We have a problem, and we need to fix it, and we all need to communicate and not bring out our guns and our knives and jerk up our knees at anything we disagree with. And we also don't need 4-story or 5-story or 3-story buildings built everywhere unless we're going to just build a high-rise and leave the rest of the land alone, which is probably the best way to go for the air and the water and the soil. But we're consumers, That's mostly what we do. What are we giving back? We're in it for ourselves. What are we giving back to the community? What are we giving back to the earth? What are we giving back to anything? Stakeholders, which is what I said in open time. All of our stakeholders here are humans. And in terms of community, our community is where we live. It doesn't matter where we grew up. If we're living someplace, if we're someplace, and we're part of the community, and we involve ourselves in it, that's our home. Affordable housing, what's affordable housing in Marin? There's no such thing. And it's all about money and ownership. If we want to, I don't know how to communicate it, but how do we get back to a commons that actually makes sense, or politics or ethics that actually take care of what's important, which is the air, the water, and the soil. Anything else, if we're not taking care of that, we're just going down. And we need to take care of that stuff, and we need a place to live. And we need to take care of each other.
Good evening.
Hey. So my name is David O'Callahan. I may be able to get this in 3 minutes, I'm not sure. So I've sat through a lot of meetings where we talk about social responsibility, urban planning from a high school textbook level, and supporting Fairfax as a way of life. And I want to address a few things, especially starting out with what I heard in the planning committee meeting last week. One of them was about a high density as part of the plan and coming in at Sir Francis Drake as the highway where this high density would be put. First of all, Sir Francis Drake is primarily a residential street. It's not 101. So when you start talking about high density, that's not talking about residential streets. The zoning change specifically addresses many parcels, so there's a lot of people here, I'm sure, going to speak in favor of one or two of these things. But you passed a zoning change which lumps a lot of zoning changes in together. And one bad apple spoils the bunch, in my opinion. So the truth is that when you have this zoning change passed, everything goes together. And this zoning change is a gating action on implementing this plan. When we sat up here at the planning committee, I saw several of the committee members hold up a multi-100-page document and say, the problem isn't here. The plan, not the zoning change. We don't want to have the zoning change, backed out of. But the truth is that zoning change is what allows that plan to be implemented. It is a gating device for the plan. And I'm speaking specifically for the development at the bottom of my street, which is 10 Alima. So one of the things about requiring, again, high density is an effective mass transit. If you look in the high school textbooks about urban density, the second line about urban high density is effective mass transit. I'd be willing to bet that not many people here take mass transit to work every day carrying their saws and things like that. So we're talking about workforce housing at the end of the street. We're talking about 22 units with 8 parking places. Again, 22 units on a 1-acre lot, steep hill on one side, creek on the other. I think that's not a good plan. 22 units with 8 parking spaces is just insane. I mean, again, people who are going to work, and this is workforce housing, are going to need to have vehicles to get around. The typical person, household in Marin, doesn't have 1 car per 3 households. They have multiple cars per household. So again, getting back to the idea that we have one piece of this zoning plan has serious problems, in my opinion. You asked the Planning Commission to go back and reevaluate their plan. I mean, that was their plan. They're not going to vote themselves, give themselves a vote of no confidence. So I'm not exactly sure what the idea behind having them go reconsider was. But, you got a vote of confidence in their own plan, which should have been expected, I think. So to the 10 Olima parcel. So it's a zoning change, 22 units on a 1.2 acre parcel. So can I have a few more minutes? You can have 1 minute. Okay. So long term, I just don't see this as a working plan. I mean, yes, it is additional housing. It's not going to necessarily be cheap housing unless it's really bad housing. So I really see that as a bad thing. So the other thing I've heard multiple people say, especially in the planning committee meeting, is that we have to comply. That was a quote, we must comply. I mean, that sounds like something out of 1984. And what I heard previously is that 50% of California is out of compliance with this rule. So I don't believe we do need to comply. There were no penalties when it was brought up for not complying. So that whole fear-mongering aspect, I believe, is out of line also. And I just want to say again that you've put this thing as a gating for the entire plan, and one bad apple does spoil the batch, and you've got at least one bad apple in here. Thank you.
Wrong way. Hi there, Hannah, Porteous Avenue, resident for 13 years, homeowner, wanting to just make the obvious point that many of us homeowners here in the town are really concerned about affordable housing and affordability here and want to have a diverse community that includes people of all backgrounds, artists, people who work for nonprofits, almost everybody these days who's having a hard time. So I want to just ask you guys to really try to focus on making policy that you think is the best as opposed to reacting to aggressive tactics and up-down. I mean, I really don't think that the right way to handle this for our town is up-down vote. If we have to go to an up-down vote because that's what happens with this lawsuit, then let's do it. But I don't think that's the best way to resolve the issue. And I don't think that lawsuits are the best way to resolve the issue. And I think it's really putting a crimp in our ability to have a creative discussion and to be able to get educated. And I also would like to say, as somebody who has a definite opinion on this issue, and others here in the room who have different opinions, that it's not good to leave the community in a position of being solely informed by partisans, because people focus on the things they're interested in, and they're busy with their 2 jobs in some cases. And that's really where this workshop and the staff comes in, because what would be really great is for us to bring our concerns in a more leisurely fashion, as you suggested, and then have a responsive discussion with staff where we can really kind of work through, well, really, what is the issue here? What are the issues there? What are the priorities? And I think what I would see as a sleeping giant right now is awaking in Fairfax. I'm sorry we're a little slow to the party, but there's a lot of people in this town who are struggling. There's a lot of people who aren't struggling but care about those who are, who miss our friends who have already had to leave. So I just want to say also the zoning is important. It protects the church proposal, which is a really important, wonderful way to serve seniors who make between $20,000 and $40,000 a year or have that income. It protects the wall property, which is a concern of many people who have different opinions from me. And it promotes this opportunity for transit and bike-oriented and walking approaches, which is harder from people who live in the hills or people who live further back. When you have that centralized housing, it makes it easier. So I really think, I hope that as many people who really want to see this kind of discussion and collaborative ways of trying to address these problems, which are big problems, it's, not just this ordinance, it's a bigger issue, that we can come together as a town to do that we can ask our friends to please withdraw their lawsuits, to please not use those kind of tactics, to please not do an up-down vote referendum that doesn't do justice, these kinds of very complex issues. So please make policy, please don't be intimidated. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is David Levin. I'm a member of the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee from Mill Valley. Our chair, Elizabeth Moody, sent you a letter about this issue and a plea really for your leadership in this situation, because obviously what's happening here is with the desperate need for housing that you've heard so clearly expressed. Now you are in the position of being asked to help everyone solve these important issues. And it's a regional problem. That's why the Mill Valley Affordable Housing Committee is interested in watching this as well. But really anybody can see the problem who looks at the traffic, that's headed into Marin every day on 580 and the problems at the interchange at 101, because all our workers, or such a high percentage of the workers, have to commute into Marin County every day. There was a great story in the Marin IJ last week about the disconnect between the need for affordable housing, and according to that poll, more than 70% of people in Marin recognize the desperate need for affordable housing that you're being asked to address here. But then when the poll asked people about whether they'd be willing to have that kind of housing near them, there was a big drop in the percentage, and that's the gap that you're being faced with here, and that's why your leadership is so desperately needed to help address this type of situation, because there's a lot of there's fear, there's misinformation, and it's so important to stick to the facts and to look at what these opportunities really present, which is, it's a community asset, and that's what you've heard from the other speakers here today who need this kind of housing, and that's why your leadership is needed to make those assets become real. If people are interested, they could come see the Redwoods Senior Housing in Mill Valley, which is it's a beautiful development. It's being enlarged now, but almost everyone in Mill Valley agrees that it's a great thing for the community, for our seniors or some lower income people to have a place to live when they get older, and that's the kind of housing that it's going to take some leadership and some time and effort to get people to understand. There's recent examples like the Drake's Way project in Larkspur, And there's the beautiful San Clemente Place in Corte Madera that I hope people are familiar with or could see. But that's the kind of opportunity that you have here. So that's why we're really asking for you to do your best, please, with your leadership abilities and help answer the concerns and spread the information that's needed to make these projects a reality. It's so important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brad.
Good evening. I think as human beings, the thing that we fear most is that which is different from ourselves. And I think that's where we're at right now. I don't think there's a sign when you come into Fairfax that says we're closed unless you already live here. We definitely need housing in our town. I think we need reasonable development. When I look historically how the town has done, how the council has done, how the planning commission has done over the 12 years I've lived here, I haven't agreed with everything, but I think overall we've done a pretty good job. We said no to the gas station. That worked out pretty well, I think. We said yes to the Good Earth. There were problems, but over time, with public input, we were able to mitigate those problems. And I think that we owe it to people to provide a fair chance to have housing, to live in our community. When we start saying no to senior housing, what are we going to say yes to in terms of housing? So I definitely encourage the idea of a public meeting. I think that conversation and discussion is the way to go. Smart lawyers have told me that no one really does well in a lawsuit except for the lawyers. So I don't think that's going to do any of us any good. We have few resources in this town. We need more. We need to become a self-sustaining town. And perhaps with reasonable development, we can do that. I think that it's fear-mongering when we start talking about 5-story buildings built along Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. I don't think that the Planning Commission now or in the future will allow that. That's not who we are as a town. And we need to preserve who we are as a town. Otherwise, why don't we just give up being a town and rejoin the county? Consider that. We can do this. We spent 14 years coming up with a general plan. If there's one thing we do well in this town, it's have conversation. And the minutes of this council's meetings over the 12 years I've lived here, I think are ample evidence of that. So I know it's hard. I know it's frightening. But I think that it's time for us to allow more housing and more affordable housing within our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
God, I couldn't have said it better. Okay. My name is Wendy Callens, and I will gladly give you my address. I work at 733 Center Boulevard, and I've worked there for 15 years. Before that, I ran a bookkeeping service here in Fairfax for 20 years. And during that time, I also published a local newspaper for 8 years. I want to speak for all of us who work here in Fairfax. This is our community, too. Most people who work here do not live here. Somebody quoted that 60% of the people who work in Marin come from outside. Well, we've just got some new statistics that 90% of the people who work in Fairfax are coming from outside. Fairfax is going the way of the rest of Marin, with home prices and rents becoming out of reach to the people who live here, work here, grew up here, and spent their lives here. I've said it before, and I will say it again. Fairfax has done an exemplary job of creating a general plan and a housing element that reflects the unique character of Fairfax. And it breaks my heart that after having done everything right and really coming up with a housing plan that is not massive, but actually fits into the character of Fairfax, people are still saying no and trying to stop it through means that I feel are causing a disservice to this town. It's been a slow and deliberative and open process. And to now abandon that process because of extreme political and legal pressures would be a disservice to the people you serve. I'm really glad to hear the conversation about let's wait and have the workshop before you take action. I think that is the right way to go. Your Planning Commission did an excellent job of laying out the situation in front of you. There's no good reason to repeal this ordinance, and certainly no imminent threat of unwanted development that would take place in the near or even far future. I agree with the people who say you should slow down, but that means taking no action at this point, but instead proceeding with the housing workshops to allow the public to express their concerns and to educate people about the process. I've read the plan, and I'm listening to some of the people and what they're saying, and I wonder if they've actually read the plan. If you're going to be against something, maybe you should know what it is before you're against it. This is a process that should guide your next move. The voice of the people who support affordable housing has been drowned out by the hyperbole of those who want to throw this process in disarray. If you repeal the ordinance, you go out of compliance with your general plan, and your housing element will no longer be certified. That is the legal issue that should concern you. And for those people who think we should thumb our noses at the state mandates, I ask, do you want to abandon CEQA? That is also a state mandate that dictates local development. You cannot pick and choose the state laws that you want to obey. CEQA was created to protect our environment. Housing elements were required to protect social equity. Last time I checked, Fairfax supported both of these. So I ask you to slow down, let the process continue, let the process dictate the next steps, and do not repeal the zoning ordinance. Let's give voice to the voiceless. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Bob Pandoli. I'm here speaking as a member of the Board of Directors of Fair Housing of Marin. Fair Housing of Marin is a county-supported nonprofit agency. Our purpose is to maximize housing opportunity for all persons, regardless of race or color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, familial status, marital status, sexual orientation, source of income, or any other arbitrary characteristic. Our focus is very specifically on housing discrimination. We fight housing discrimination with education, counseling to renters, would-be home purchasers, sellers, and landlords. We also intervene and provide mediation services, and as a last resort, we have the ability to litigate and have from time to time. We would like to urge you to maintain Ordinance 778. We would urge you to consider the fair housing implications of impeding the development of affordable housing, including senior housing here in Fairfax. We would remind you that as recipients of the Community Development Block Grants, the town of Fairfax is mandated to affirmatively further fair housing, and repealing the zoning ordinance may create an impediment to fair housing. This is a great concern to us, and we wanted to share that concern with you. Also, action to repeal the ordinance may constitute an unlawful discrimination on the basis of age or income in violation of California law. Development of affordable housing for low-income folks would be a significant step towards meeting the disparate and ever-growing need for housing for some of the county's most vulnerable citizens. Fairfax should continue to focus on broadening housing opportunities rather than stepping away. In conclusion, we'd urge you to take your time with this. We think the suggestions from many speakers tonight to conduct a community workshop is a good idea. Our staff is available to provide assistance and to elaborate further on our comments if that would be helpful. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Mimi.
Hi, Mimi Newton. I think there's a lot of hyperbole going on in the community. I think that people are taking extreme positions because they don't understand what's really happening here, and I think that we can all avoid taking extreme positions and think a little bit more rationally about what's happening and work together. And I think all the sides on these issues can work together. I support rescinding Ordinance 778 and making a fresh start. I encourage the council to work with staff to prioritize how you would pick up each separate piece of the ordinance and move forward with prioritized, targeted workshops that deal with those pieces one at a time. We don't want to miss out on the opportunities to provide meaningful, affordable housing to vulnerable populations like seniors and low-income people. And I'm someone who believes in open space preservation and the development of affordable housing at the same time. I don't think that's necessarily a contradiction if it's done wisely. And I think we can be a model for the rest of the county in how you come together to do that. I think we need to acknowledge that after all those years, when all those people put all that work into the general plan, at the end of the day, there was one person who went through that housing element with a fine-tooth comb and found errors that nobody else, including myself, who put countless hours and read that thing, found. And instead of thanking that person for having spent that time and effort to find those errors and point them out to us, I think that we sort of rather ungraciously reacted with moving forward without really considering the points that had been raised, regardless of whether they were at the beginning, middle, or end of the process. And that is why I think the whole referendum issue ensued. And I think that that behavior should be a lesson to us on how we start working together. I think we need to take a little humility and a little gracious communication with each other, not take extreme positions, recognize that we all make mistakes, and we can all benefit from each other's eyes on the document that we're all putting together. And so I hope you vote to rescind next month, and let's show the rest of the Marin how to do this. Thanks.
Thank you. Kiki?
Good evening, council and staff. Nice to see you again. What does San Francisco, San Mateo, and Marin County have in common? We are the most important and expensive housing market in the United States. If we oppose the gentrification that is occurring in San Francisco and in other places in Marin, where diversity is being pushed out for the purpose of greater rents, greater sale prices, etc., we need to protect our diversity of incomes, ages, family status, and national origin. We need to be vigilant about that. It's easy to let it slip away. If we oppose formula businesses in Fairfax, then we must oppose efforts to rescind Ordinance 778. I've been to a lot of these meetings, and as far as I can tell, the reason that Chevron is not building right now is because this new ordinance will prohibit formula businesses in our downtown. If we support public input to governance, then you must support the general plan. I attended the Planning Commission meeting last week, and I have to say, those were a few of the proudest hours that I have spent in a public meeting in this town, and I've been in this county, and I've been to many of them. I was absolutely impressed and so elated to see the careful study and analysis of the issues, the documents, and the recommendation that came forth to you to keep in place Ordinance 778. I'd also like to say I had the opportunity to read a couple of the letters that were provided to you regarding the school that is adjacent to the Lutheran church site. And despite the fact that at least one of them was written by someone that I consider to be a friend, I have to say I think that's the worst form of NIMBYism. To say that construction of affordable micro units for seniors will disrupt their child's private education, private school privilege, is just not right. I call your attention to the fact that White Hill School at the end of my street was under construction for a good 2 years, causing massive amount of disruption to our neighborhood, our streets, and especially the people who very graciously worked with staff, construction crews, and others to make it possible to do that. Why? We are a community. We do this for each other. The public process that developed the general plan which is a model for the state over 15 years, and the certified housing element, also developed over many years. Taking these documents apart and choosing which parts that you like and which parts you don't is not appropriate. Which parcel zoning you're going to approve and which parcel zoning you're going to brush away is not a respectful approach to the public process and input and staff time that went into it. Yes, I'm done. Lastly, it would be a derogation of your duty to us, to all the residents of Fairfax and all of the contributors if you rescind 778. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir.
Perhaps I'm the last commenter. My name is Tom Childers. I live at the end of Glen Drive, and I was one of the people who worked on the general plan. I was part of GPAC for 2 years. And I was actually the last person to join GPAC, so there were a bunch of other people that worked a lot longer than I did. I simply wanted to say to you that we thought about these issues really long and hard and debated them for hours and hours and hours. The general plan, the housing element in particular, is the result of a lot of careful discussion. And as much as I support low-income housing, senior housing, I have concerns about traffic. I drive past 2 very large schools whenever I leave the town. I'd like to remind you that this set of zoning changes do not create affordable housing. They don't create open space, but they do enable the Planning Commission to make the right kinds of decisions and look at the right kinds of projects that will do that. So I support the changes to the zoning plan, partially because they were very, very well considered, but also partially because they in themselves do not make any changes to the town. They simply set us up to move forward and for your Planning Commission and Planning Department to make the right kind of decisions. And I built one of the few houses that's been built in Fairfax over the last 10 years. It took a long time. Took a lot of effort to get it through planning, and the planning staff is very, very thorough. So have faith in the people that you put in position to work on that. They do a good job. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liesl. I live in Fairfax. I'm just going to say that this continues to be a very nerve-wracking process for a lot of us, so I hope we can all kind of try to stay steady. I am feeling a little like sad and frustrated that I have had to put so much of my time and energy as just sort of this normal, generally not very political citizen into trying to educate myself and educate others about this because there's been this stall in the political process due to the whole referendum and all these other things that have happened where I feel like it's been really hard to get people who are really knowledgeable to just like help us go through this process of learning about what the general plan is about. I mean, I've looked at it, I've read it, and, you know, but I'm not a planner, so that would be really nice, but it seems like it's gotten stalled by this very divisive process. I think for some people who bought homes here in the 70s and 80s and earlier, it's really puzzling to them why we're so upset about it, and that's those of us who are some of us who are younger or people like me who are older and took 12 million years to save it to buy a house, and in a first-time homeowner, we've seen firsthand the kind of damage that friends and family are going through as they try to struggle with one of the most, you know, amazing housing crises in a long time. The last time I looked, the average home in Fairfax was for sale for $639,000. Rents for 3 bedrooms were running somewhere around $2,800 to $3,500 a month. That's a lot of money for, say, a family of 4 or anybody else. So I just want to say that I'm really concerned that for all of the good that many of the people on both sides of this have done for this town, that, you know, we're really looking, is this the legacy we want to leave the town, that it's, polarized, that the progressive and environmental communities are fighting with each other, the town government is possibly unable to fulfill its functions because it's dealing with lawsuits running into the hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever the quote was from the letter that was part of the packet. We really need to think about the process that we're in, and I'm just going to note quickly that A lot of people on the council, a lot of people in the audience are members of the Green Party, and the Green Party platform of California says one of its points is increase affordable housing supply, including build human-scale, low-income housing, create rent subsidy programs for the poor, promote development that encourages urban density, and discourages sprawl, eliminate requirements for off-street parking and street dedication, which forces the housing sector to subsidize the automobile industry. So, I mean, this is the green agenda to some extent. The state party, the national party, they all promote reasonable, affordable housing as part of a sustainability agenda. So I just want to keep saying that we're asking the town council to sort of walk that walk and not back down in the face of intimidation. Don't rescind Ordinance 778. You know, the zoning you put into place to implement the housing element was developed, from what I understand, out of years of community input and careful planning. So slow down and give time for public input and education before you make that decision to rescind. We put a lot at risk by doing that.
Yep. Thank you very much. Joseph, good evening.
Thank you, David. Joseph Odom, I live at 98 Porteous, and I've served on county boards over the years, the Integrated Pest Management and the Health Council, and I'm on other boards. Of course, I'm in favor of affordable housing. What I'm not in favor of is wholesale rezoning. And I've lived in Fairfax for 30 years, and I've never really paid a whole lot of attention to zoning issues, because whenever a parcel was rezoned, it always came up before the town council. And to have multiple parcels at one time come up is a new way of doing business. And we all know that rezoning parcels is a little bit like making sausage. It's not very pretty, but a lot of elements have to come into it, and I'm not sure that they have. I also want to mention something that I don't know if has been mentioned yet tonight, which is Assembly Bill 1537. And that passed the Assembly on May 19th. And what it does is it rezones Fairfax from being a metropolitan or urban zoning the same as San Francisco, and rezones it into suburban. It passed 67-2, and I talked to our representative's office today, and they said that it has a very excellent chance of passing the state Senate and becoming a law. We will no longer be required to have the same density of housing that San Francisco, low income density housing that San Francisco has. And I also just want to mention that I was noodling around on the town website and saw that low income for the town of Fairfax was listed on the website as $90,500. So that's kind of, you know, puts it a little bit in perspective as to what we're arguing about. And you can't say how much a house would cost if you had that kind of income, but I did anyway, and this is a soft number, doesn't mean anything, but it's close to $450,000. So that's the kind of money that landlords will be able to get for their low-income properties. I got 20 seconds left, and this is just a personal aside. I want to just say that my name got put into some group on Facebook without my permission that was in favor of maintaining Ordinance 778. And I just want to say that we need to have a little bit of manners in this age of social media and not do that kind of thing to each other. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Good evening, sir.
Hi, my name is Chris McManus. I live across the street from the church project on Sir Francis Drake. Christ Lutheran Church has been good neighbors. They're good neighbors, and I applaud the project. I think it's a good project, and I applaud the general plan. I support the general plan. No one will be put out more than I I will hear the trucks. I'll hear the skill saws, the nail guns. But I think this is progress for Fairfax. I think this is a good thing. I went on the Christ Lutheran Church website today, clcfairfax.org, to see, what their angle was. And their angle was, their mission, it said, was to spread the word of Jesus Christ. And it's been a long time since I went to Sunday school. I went to Sunday school at Mount Carmel in 1959, so I'm a little rusty on my Bible. But what I saw here is that we have a moral obligation that supersedes any procedural referendum to thwart and frustrate the general plan. We have a moral obligation to house the elderly, the sick, and the disabled. And I would suggest that this supersedes any petty inconvenience that you may feel by allowing affordable housing. And if you talk to your rabbi, or if you talk to your pastor, or you talk to your parish priest, it turns out that we have a moral obligation to house the homeless and to care for the sick. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. It's hard to follow that. My name is Alicia Klein, and I'm a senior project manager at Resources for Community Development, and we're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. And I'm here at the invitation of the members of Christ Lutheran Church, who are in the back. Raise your hands, ladies. Okay, there you go. And I'm not going to repeat what I've already spoken before you, but I did want to tell you a little bit more about the difficult decisions that you're faced with or will be faced with as more information is available to you, and how it will affect or how it may affect the development of up to 40 units of affordable housing for low-income seniors at the Lutheran Church site. And it seems like I totally understand the division on the board, or I think maybe I'm trying to understand it, that the impulse to let Ordinance 788 stand, as the Planning Commission reiterated, was that so much work has gone into it. It keeps you in compliance with the housing element, and it allows the Lutheran Church development to go forward, except for the potential legal risks that you need to weigh. On the other hand, the impulse to repeal 778 also makes sense because of the community sentiment that I've been hearing at these meetings about the process and errors, and from my more narrow self-interested, when I wear my project manager hat, it's possible that it is more expedient to satisfy the litigants and for the big housing element issues and just move forward on the Lutheran Church site, which seems to have more of a consensus. So I'm kind of torn by my my impulse to want to support the whole housing element, which will do great things, I think, for Fairfax. And then how do we meet the needs for, this is, of all of the parcels that were worked on in the ordinance, or included in the ordinance, the church site is the one that actually has a development concept. It has a developer. We have funding committed. Actually, Roy Bateman from the county I'm not sure if he's still here. He was here for your earlier item. And the decisions that are going to be made have an impact. If the ordinance is repealed by the judicial system, either in July or in November, as my understanding is, that may put a one-year moratorium, which could severely hamper the development's ability to get financing. It's not totally dead, but it's extremely risky, and it's an unknown. If the decision is, the writ is supported or the petition is supported, and there's a referendum in the fall, and it prevails, that, or whatever, if the rezoning stays, then we're good. If the rezoning loses, then again, we're in that unknown. So just, I know I'm out of time, but I would request that maybe a question be asked of legal counsel, if you can, to find out about a potential scenario for moving forward. If there's a one-year moratorium, is there a way to move forward on the church site? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Morgan, good evening.
Hi, my name is Morgan Hall, and I'd just like to say that the general plan is an amazing document. It took 14 years of work by the best and most caring minds in this town, and they were guided by trained, seasoned professionals like Jim Moore. The general plan's the envy of many of the other communities in this county. It is the state of the art. So now we're being asked to tweak this document has been tweaked for 14 years. We're being asked to do this as a result of what's best called the Chicken Little petition. The planning is clear. The Planning Commission recommended to the Town Council not to repeal Ordinance 778. So, in the meantime, anything in the highway commercial zone is in a state of limbo, and that could last who knows how long. One thing I want to be sure people understand and try to make clear is the difference between zoning regulations, like the general plan, that says this area, in this area, you may or may not do this or that. It's a question of opportunity, as Shelley Hamilton of the Planning Commission said the other night. So because it's zoned a certain way does not mean it's going to happen. I understand that over the past decade, 12 housing units have been built in Fairfax total, when the opportunity to build far more was there. The municipal code, in its zoning section, controls the process through which somebody can build something. If they want to develop a PDD or whatever it may be, that sets the ground rules. Development in a planned development district, if you look at the municipal code, is an arduous process. I'm guessing lasting at least 3 years. That is the time for the public to raise their voices. Not now. Not to go after a general zoning document like the general plan. So I urge that the town council not to repeal the ordinance, and I urge them to allow the general plan to treat each item as on a case-by-case basis, whether or not it be affordable housing or trying to preserve the character of the town. It's all there in the general plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Good evening, sir.
Hello, my name is Roy Bateman. I'm one of the staff people at the county that administer the home program funding, which is part of the picture for the Peace Village project. I started in this job in 1984, and at that point you could buy a 3-bedroom house for about $150,000. Things have really changed since then. During the 30 years that I've worked for the county, some of the housing developments that we have funded in Fairfax include Bennett House, Buckaloo Creekwood Housing, Fairfax Family Homes, the Live Oak Design Competition, and the Vest Pocket Community. And I would like to think that those projects have fit well into Fairfax to the point that most people who live in town couldn't tell you exactly where they are. But there are some big things that have changed. A year ago, HUD changed the home regulations, and in the past I've seen my role as to be as supportive as possible to sponsors of affordable housing proposals, to support them in making funding available early in the planning process, to hold that money as long as it took to get through the process. Unfortunately, Congress changed the regulations on the home program. We now have a 2-year time limit to put the funds under contract, but we're not allowed to put the funds under contract unless all the other financing has been secured, which can't happen until all the zoning and planning approvals have been obtained, et cetera, et cetera. So it really puts a time crunch, and it's transforming my role into being one of an enforcer, and to see this as an ongoing competition between applicants for funding where we can't really hold money if there's another project that's ready to move forward more quickly. So I just wanted to add this piece to the context. I know you're going to have a difficult job figuring out how to proceed. I hope you're able to find a way to navigate a path that will turn this into an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. Good evening.
Hi, my name's Eric Sohn, and I'm here as chair of the Board of Trustees of Cascade Canyon School. We've been leasing this site, our facilities, from the Christ Lutheran Church for the past 28 years. The CCS Board of Trustees has been following the debate over the Fairfax rezoning ordinance closely over the past months and years. As the tenant for the past 28 years at 2626 Sir Francis Drake, we've become concerned that we haven't been acknowledged as a stakeholder in the recent public discussion. As a board and a school, we're neither for nor against the senior housing project that's been proposed for this site, for the simple reason that we haven't been provided enough information to formulate a position. However, we do have serious concerns about how 40 residential units would be compatible with the continued uninterrupted operation of Cascade Canyon School. We've asked the developer to elaborate on how they propose to minimize the project's impact on school operations during and after construction, but have received little beyond vague assurances in response. Despite our request, we also haven't been shown a detailed footprint of the proposed new development. Only if we know exactly which 2 acres the church would sell to RCD, essentially where the proposed development would be located relative to our current operations. Unless that happens, we cannot do any kind of real analysis on the likely impact on the school. The response has been that detailed designs don't yet exist. In our view, we're basically being asked to support the project without being given the information we need to assess its likely impact on our operations, our family, and our community. Our position is that we're open to dialogue and cooperation to find a way to make this project work in a way that benefits all parties involved: the town of Fairfax, the church, the school, and the developer. But our primary responsibility as a board of trustees is to the children of Cascade Canyon School and their families. We'll need strong, detailed assurances that their interests will be protected before we're willing to proceed. We have a lease in place, and our board would be negligent to waive any of our rights as tenants without such assurances. Again, we're not necessarily opposed to the proposed project, but we believe the interests of over 60 children from Fairfax and the surrounding communities are no less important than the rights of 40 seniors that would eventually move into the development. We look forward to being a part of the discussion going forward, and we thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns.
Thank you very much. Jennifer.
Jennifer Hammond. I live in Fairfax. I'm not speaking for any organization or affiliation. I'm speaking mostly out of 20 years of working as a paralegal in a law office. So I always fall back to my legal training when I'm looking at issues like this. Just simply, I think that a lot of the concerns that people are raising, and I'm going to sort of mirror what other people have said, are able to be addressed, not at this point in the process, but in the workshops and looking at the general plan, the housing element, and making amendments as needed depending on the feedback received at that point in the process. You can't change the general plan or the housing element by changing an ordinance. The ordinance just follows the policy of the general plan. So the ordinance, the general plan has its own notice requirements and meeting requirements, and any changes to that would need to go through that process. So certainly a lot of the issues that people are concerned about, the typos in the tables, are not something that need to, actually the zoning ordinance does not need to be repealed to fix those issues. And actually, the zoning ordinance that was recently passed does protect the wall property because it actually makes the zoning map rule. And so the density requirements for the wall property are actually fixed by this ordinance. So I just don't see a reason to, I can't see any reason to repeal at this point. And if the writ is validated, then and we repeal, then we have a whole year before we can revisit the issue, I believe. So I think it's better to slow down, to have the workshops, to see if there's revisions that need to be made to the general plan, get feedback from the community, and go from there. Thanks very much for your time. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Heather Gould. I'm a renter here in Fairfax with my family on Klaus Circle. Been here for 5 years. I support increased diversity in our town, and I support better housing options and low-income housing options. And I wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but the comment about NIMBYism concerned me. I am a parent and a board member of a child at Cascade Canyon School, so possibly that was my letter that was referred to. And I just want to clarify that from the perspective of Cascade Canyon School, again, reiterating what my colleague on the board, Eric Sohn, said, is that we have not made our minds up about this project. The conversations at the table have been in the very beginning stages of discussion, and it's been that way for a long time, again, because we just simply haven't had enough information. But it seems like this process, it seems like there's a swirl of politics happening, and we've perhaps stuck our toe into it with coming here tonight in these letters. I just wanted to clarify that Cascade Canyon School has enjoyed a wonderful relationship with the church over these many years. It's been a wonderful asset, I believe, to the town. The school is very unique. It teaches kids a lot about community service, about nonviolent communication, about how to solve problems and to work out differences. And it's really in that spirit that we are here tonight and raising these questions. We just need some more information and assurances so that we can participate actively in the dialogue. So we're asking to be included, and we're not concerned about sharing our backyard. This morning was an annual event at our school. It's Grandparents' Day. We have elders from our community come, and it's a multi-generational dialogue with children K through 8 and grandparents and special friends who are much older and wiser. And so, I think that's just an example of the kind of activity that we and the community that we are, and we do cherish our seniors. We're a very progressive community, but we do think that this potentially could impact our school positively or negatively, and we need more information to be better informed and involved. So we look forward to those opportunities, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Norma.
Hi, Norma Fragoso, Mirna Avenue. I feel like this is Groundhog Day. We keep coming back to the same thing over and over again. I was at the Planning Commission at the last meeting and was so impressed with the deliberation, the public participation process, the caliber of discussion and analysis conducted by the Planning Commission. And I urge Council to support their recommendation. I know it seems crazy that, you know, everybody has their opinions and differing opinions, it seems, but in my life, when I get into a situation where there's conflicting interests and views about how to move forward and what to do, basically what I fall back on is, what is the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? What is the best thing for me? What is the best thing for everyone to do? And I think that the Planning Commission and the Town Council and the whole community that worked on this general plan for 15 years did the right thing, did their homework. They did something that's a significant benefit to the town. They took appropriate action. The Planning Commission, the town, took appropriate action, took legal action, took action to preserve, to conserve, and maintain the character of Fairfax that we love. And I know it's a simplistic approach when you have lawsuits coming at you, but the town did the right thing, and it feels wrong to back down and be held hostage by a campaign of misinformation obsessed with correcting typos. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Norma.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Frank Ager, 13 Meadow Way. The housing debate is being carried out in Novato, Sausalito, Mill Valley, Marinwood, San Rafael, Corte Madera, Larkspur, and now Fairfax. 4 issues affect affordability. The first is the availability of rental housing. The second is living wages. $8 to $12 an hour is insufficient. Third is rent control. And the fourth is approval of new real low and moderate income housing. Fairfax is a leader statewide. Fairfax has done more to protect existing rental housing stock than any of the 480 cities in California. Fairfax has the highest living wage law of any of the 58 counties or 480 cities in California. $16.71 with benefits, $19.09 without benefits. If every employer in Fairfax paid those kind of wages, it would go a long way in helping the affordability issue of rental housing. You are to be commended. You know, Fairfax actually approved a rent control ordinance, but it was overturned by a referendum. Fairfax is one of the most dense, affordable towns and cities in Marin. The housing proponents have only one solution: higher density as set by the Association of Bay Area Governments. Why are they silent on living wages and rent control? The massive rezoning that took place March 5th listed over 230 parcels, the largest rezoning since 1973 in Fairfax. The referendum does not prohibit either the Lutheran Church property from applying for rezoning or the workforce housing project on Olima. Much misinformation is out there. I urge the church and a nonprofit developer to hire an architect, prepare preliminary drawings, and apply for rezoning under the Planned Development District zoning codes tomorrow. The referendum does not prohibit any application, be it senior project or workforce housing project. Let each project stand on its own merits. Zoning ordinance number 778 does not stop sprawl. We shepherd the 70-unit Bennett House Senior Project through the existing PDD ordinance. Cascade Canyon School should not be pushed out by any project. The Lutheran Church project can go forward with or without ordinance number 778. I urge you to rescind ordinance 778 and allow us to start fresh. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Lou. Welcome back.
Good evening. Lou Tremaine, 1790 Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. I spent a lot of time working on the general plan. And I think it's a good document. But I'll tell you something right now. Ordinance 7078 has a stake through its heart. You're going to have to repeal it. You don't have a choice. It has flaws. It has flaws that scare people in this community. But it's not enough to just repeal it. What you need to do is lay out a very definite, very immediate plan to replace what comes in its wake. $778 was well meant, but it was a rushed job. And as a rushed job, it contained flaws. That's too bad. We know what it was born of. It was born of the Chevron project. That sword of Damocles isn't over your head anymore. You have the ability to take the time to go back. And I think that the idea of doing it piece by piece, starting with the senior housing project, which we need in this town, get that right, get it on, get it running, and get it built. Tenalima, I was there when the idea was hatched, and I'll tell you, it has a lot of potential, but it needs to be done right. It needs to be well thought out. And I think through zoning, you need to make sure that there are units in that development that don't have vehicles registered to the property. And for that, those people who choose that path will get a lower rent. And you need to figure out how to do that. There was a comment about thumbing our nose at the state and how we can't thumb our nose at some laws and then support CEQA. Well, I disagree with that. I was one of the first sitting up there to thumb my nose, along with Frank, at the state when they told us we couldn't tell people they had to notify their neighbors about spraying pesticides, or when they told us that we had to accept 3 stories and 30 units per acre. We thumbed our nose. So we don't really care what you think. This is Fairfax, and we're going to do this our way. We can still do this our way. I've been sitting at home and I've been watching the parade of people who walked up to talk to you tonight, at your last meeting, at the meeting before that. And the only thing I could think was, isn't this us? I mean, really? How many times have we been on the same side of the same issue? Isn't this us? Why are we allowing this issue to divide us? As the leaders of this community in this moment right now, y'all need to figure out how to pull the team back together. You're the coaching staff. And the coaching staff has a team that is split. And only you can figure out how to bring it back. Figuring out how to bring it back is simple, really. You repeal 778, you come back not next month, not in 2 months, but immediately. Tonight, in your comments, talk to us about how you're going to put this all back together so that we don't have to have this fight. This is sad, and it doesn't need to be sad. This is us. We need to pull together. It would be a crime to let this thing go to the ballot. An absolute crime. We only need to look east to San Rafael and look at what they just went through in their supervisorial campaign and ask ourselves, do we want that here? Do we want to throw dynamite into the rift in the hope that that rift will close when physics tells us that the rift is going to go much wider with the explosion? I don't think so. You are our leaders now. You need to put this back together. You need to bring us back together. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Yvette.
Yvette Wakefield, still here. I am one of the people opposed to the housing developments proposed for Fairfax. First, regarding the affordable housing for seniors at the Lutheran Church site. That housing is not going to be affordable or even available for the people who most need to have affordable housing. The people most needing affordable housing are the poorest people in our community. I am one of the poor people in Fairfax. I need affordable housing, but I will not qualify for the senior housing at the Lutheran Church site because my income is too low. Those units are for people with incomes between $22,000 and $40,000 a year. I receive Social Security disability of $877 a month, so I am not qualified for affordable housing. Am I supposed to live in the street? 23 years ago, I was living in a studio apartment with my 14-year-old son here in Fairfax, paying $600 a month rent. Affordable housing was built in San Rafael, and I called to apply for one of the units. I was told that I didn't qualify because my income was too low. I protested that the housing was supposed to be for low income, and the rent would be less than what I was paying. But the person informed me that my income was low income, and only low-income people could apply, not low. In addition, no housing should be built along a main street or freeway or close to a bus depot because of the devastating health effects of the air and noise pollution. Environmentalist Robert D. Bullard tells us that the following: clean air is a basic right. Air pollution claims 70,000 lives a year, nearly twice the number killed in traffic accidents. Diesel particulate matter alone contributes to 125,000 cancers each year in the USA. Students attending school close to major thoroughfares have higher incidences of respiratory distress. Children and adults living, working, or attending schools within 300 meters of major roadways are significantly more likely to get asthma, other respiratory illnesses, and leukemia. The Sierra Club published a paper which listed some of the key findings from scientific studies. A Denver study shows children living near busy roads are 6 to 8 times more likely to develop leukemia and other forms of cancer. A Journal of the American Medical Association study finds that increasing public transportation along with other traffic control measures during the 1996 Atlanta Olympics reduced acute asthma. That was because of the reduction in car traffic. Crucial public policy changes must include a more balanced transportation policy, greater emphasis on public transportation systems and other options such as walking and bicycling. In addition, we need to limit development near new roadways or old roadways too, if people live there. The Journal of the American Board of Family Medicine published an article titled "The Toxicity of Diesel Exhaust, Implications for Primary Care." The article stated that the majority of patients who present to urban primary care clinics and emergency departments will have had significant chronic exposure to diesel exhaust because most use and or live near busy streets and highways, and also that in Japan and Europe, epidemiologic surveyors have demonstrated high acute and chronic respiratory disease morbidity rates from occupational and proximity exposure to diesel exhaust. In addition, every school day, at least 7 or 8 Golden Gate buses line up on Sir Francis Drake for picking up the school children from White Hill Middle School. Many of the drivers leave the engines running while they wait, sometimes for 20 or 25 minutes. The children who attend Cascade Canyon School, I hope those people are still here, which is at the Lutheran Church, have to walk by the line of buses and be exposed to this daily pollution. And the other bus drivers on the regular runs often wait at that location for their next run to begin, with the engines running the whole time. This goes on from morning to night.
Yvette?
Okay, one sentence. I don't think those drivers know about the energy crisis this planet is having because they are wasting a limited resource.
Thanks, Yvette.
I told you guys 7 or 8 years ago you shouldn't build housing on the main streets because of the health problems from the pollution. I said that here in this council.
Okay.
It's okay.
Good evening.
Hi. I'm Angela Gott. I live in San Rafael. I'm a boomer. I was born in 1951. The boomers are 1946 to 1964. I never married, never had kids. I've worked since I was 18. Minimum wage was about $1.25 in 1969 when I was 18. 1968 was the peak year for minimum wage to buy the most. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's been a losing thing ever since as far as what minimum wage buys. So I'm like this lady. I fall into extremely low income. There's low income, very low income, and extremely. And Marin, all of Marin, has never seen fit to build housing for the extremely low income category. I've lived here since 1989. I've always worked. I was a bookseller at Borders Books for 8 years. I, at the peak, earned only $19,000 a year. I can't collect Social Security until I'm 70. If I was to collect it now, I'd lose 25% of the check for life. And my mother is 85, she's in Kentucky, so I could live a long time. Women tend to live longer. So here I was, born in 51, entering the job market. Women were always discriminated against. We were the last hired, lowest paid. That's why we've got Lilly Ledbetter law. And so as a result, I haven't earned that much money. And so I'll get about $1,200 a month at 70. So where am I supposed to go? These senior housing for low income are going to be too much for me to be able to afford. So where am I supposed to go? And I can't be the only one. She indicated that she's one too. So there's going to be a lot of women homeless who are seniors. I voted in every election. I've tried to be a civic citizen. My rent when I moved into this nice one-bedroom apartment in San Rafael off of Lincoln with great landlords was $800 a month in 2005. I'm now up to $1,150 a month. I only earned $5,601 in 2013. So I am spending my savings and my retirement in hopes that I can find a job, because nobody hires you once you're 60, and I'm 63. I'm a college graduate with advanced degrees. But no one hires you. They Google you. They find out how old you are. It's very easy to do. and you don't get interviews. There's a lot of age discrimination too. So we're being squeezed by, we can't get affordable living, a living wage, we can't get hired full-time with benefits, we can't even get hired at all. I actually was hired by UPS this past Christmas because they didn't know how old I was at the interview. So when it came time to do the third-party check, the criminal background and all, of course, I had to go my driver's license, my date of birth. And then they let me work 1 week. And they said, this isn't working out. So, you know, as soon as they find out how old you are, you're like gone, if you can even manage to get a job. So I just want you all to think about this. There's a lot of seniors, and we're growing. 10,000 of us turn 65 every day. So I know Fairfax can't house all of us, but you have got to keep in mind that this is going to be a growing thing, and there's going to be a lot of women who, for whatever reason, did not earn that much money, and we need housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Valerie Hood, 79 Dominga Avenue. It's really hard to speak after that. I've been really concerned about my friends, such as Yvette, who cannot find housing here, who end up in really untenable situations. I've been accused now, after coming up about the referendum, with being against housing, low-income housing, which I find really sort of beyond the pale, to tell you the truth. I've been watching the community organize against the referendum, when the referendum was simply about fixing what was termed errata, but which are actually mistakes, upzoning many parcels from 1 to 1.5 to a density of 2 to 2.5. That would change the quality of life here in Fairfax. No one had a problem with the prior densities. No one has come forward to say, I made this mistake either on purpose or by accident. It would be very nice to know how this occurred. I don't know if we're ever going to know. I've asked for that information. I don't know if I'm ever going to get it. The other thing that I have a real problem with is the idea that I really get what Lou says, and I think Lou was so brilliant, and if he was running for president tonight, I would vote for him. But people who are low income and seniors, the last thing they give up is their cars, because they might have to move into them tomorrow. Go out and try to find a house. As I've been trying to help Yvette, there are 100 people for every house that comes up. And putting more housing in Fairfax is such a setup for people right now. I just have to say, on this one level, people are being pulled in here, told, don't worry, if we get this housing through, you'll get to live here. You'll have a house. Well, that is utter BS. Anybody who wants to can apply for that housing, and there are people from all over San Francisco, Oakland, and everywhere else. Last time we were told that people from Mars aren't going to come here. Well, we're not talking about people from Mars. We're talking about people desperate all over the country who no longer have housing, and they don't have affordable housing. They're certainly not getting it at Wingcup, where the county was so kind with some of our sustainable housing advocates to help make the $100,000 income as part of the median income, so that jammed up the numbers. At Wingcup, they have 9 affordable units. It really concerns me that in what I really want to hear about, and we haven't been told yet, what does affordable mean? I don't know what that means. I'm really with Lou. I would like to see us start over because I don't trust what I've seen. I don't trust the people that are coming in here and trying to shove this down our throats. I mean, this issue is not about housing to me, but it's about the mistakes and the upzoning. And when it was brought before the council, we had, you know, rather than talk about it and wait for another time, as Council Member Bragman asked, just 1 month, We were brushed aside by council members Goddard and Weinstock, and it was just rammed down our throats. And I think these mistakes need to be corrected. And I think we need to have a real community discussion. And I don't want to come up around a charade and have our discussions all, manicured and put off into different directions. If we're going to have discussions, I want real discussions. I want to hear what everybody in the room has to say. But I think we need to revisit this. I think we need trust again. It's gone for me. I've lived here for so long. I was one of the founders of Sustainable Fairfax. I was one of the co-founders of the EcoFest. My degree came from Sonoma State in environmental. And I just, these issues have been so important to me for so long. I care about the environment. I care about the animals. I care about people. I work on things every day, and you all know I do. Thank you.
Good evening, Mallory.
Mallory Geithheim. I wasn't going to speak tonight, and I came here not knowing. And I understand there are both sides, and I can feel both sides. There's the high-density side, and there's the need for people to have a place to live. I don't know how to do both. But I do know that we are so polarized that it's going to be very hard for anybody to know anything except if they kind of move in the middle a little bit. And when I was listening, what occurred to me, I watched a program, I think it was on PBS, and it was from Scandinavia. And I think what I saw was people, single mothers, families, low-income people, truly low-income people. And the way that their life changed was they built housing that had small little apartments with shared everything else. And maybe this is Fairfax. Maybe we need to do something that's really innovative here. Maybe we have to rethink what we mean by low income and provide real shared housing where people can, with the older people who are living on pensions, and the people who are raising kids, they can work together where the grandparents, the older people, can take care of the mothers who are working to support it. Maybe we really need to think what we want to do as housing, and not to support developers and not support just low-income people, but low-income people. I appreciate pretty much everything that I heard tonight, and I don't know what to do other than let's provide something that can really serve human beings in a way where we feel needed, where older people can help younger people, and we can really do it in both directions and have housing that can be shared. And think about community housing, not just everybody in their little apartment who has a lobby that they live together in, but people who cook for each other and they share they grow gardens and they share things. I think this can be done. We just need some people who are creative and innovative, and a council that can maybe make something like this happen. Thanks.
Good evening, Alexander.
Hi. Alexander Binnick, 7 Meadow Way. I asked the council members to please move the repeal process forward and then deal with the areas for possible rezoning one by one rather than as part of a package deal. Doing so does not prevent the construction of truly affordable housing. Rather, it allows a focused look at each aspect of future development. Lumping them all together in the housing element and in the ordinance has led to some unintentional inconsistencies and raises further questions that need community exploration. For example, the ordinance calls for rezoning the site of the Fairfax Market. If housing is built there, where are the residents of Bennett House, the Church Senior Project, and any other affordable housing supposed to shop for food? At the Good Earth, which doesn't carry most of the brands they are likely to want or be able to afford, Or must they drive to another city to get their basic groceries and sundries? There are also questions about what truly constitutes, quote, workforce housing. The housing element in the ordinance include market rate housing intended for people with higher incomes rather than being limited to truly affordable housing for very low income families. It even calls for a density bonus program. These are controversial issues that warrant fuller discussion by our entire community. And given the concern about the timing for approving the proposed senior housing project at the Christ Lutheran Church site, I would like to see the first community workshop focus not on the general plan, but rather specifically on that particular project. That way, any potential controversy about that project, including whether the proposal includes sufficient off-street parking, can get a head start to being discussed by the full Fairfax community and hopefully resolved much more quickly and easily so that the council could rezone it before year end, thus not endangering its funding. I also hope the council quickly follows through on the suggestion that it moves forward with a separate ordinance to extend the boundaries of the ban on formula stores. I don't believe that the drafting of appropriate language for preliminary council discussion has to wait until the rezoning repeal process has been completed. Finally, I suggest that any community workshop or workshops held on housing issues not use a charrette approach. Brainstorming in small groups in front of stations with markers and big sheets of paper may give the appearance of avoiding conflict, but I think it just postpones the resolution of that conflict because it's not conducive to deep conversation among folks with strongly held differing points of view. Some other structure that allows for discussion among all those present would almost certainly be better. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Jody.
Oh boy, what a process this is. I've been waiting all evening to hear everybody. I really wanted to hear the folks that had opinions different than mine. And what I've come to is that there are people who want to start fresh. They want to do things one piece at a time, which I think is, on one level, is a good process. But I don't see how we can quite start fresh when we already have something in place. We have a general plan, we have a housing element, we need to move it forward with changes, and it sounds like we're going to have to break it apart and go bit by bit, at least to some degree, in order for there to be enough voices heard and enough consensus, because we're going to have to eventually go with the consensus, and not everybody's going to get their way. But we need to keep moving forward, and we have things that have been approved, and we need to move that in the direction of refinement, is how I see it. I just also want to say that I really, really, really want to live in a diverse community in Fairfax. I think diversity is really critical. It's really necessary for all species to survive. I lived in San Francisco for 15 years. We're so far from living in a community like San Francisco, and I would love to see Fairfax with a lot more diversity. As you know, I work with seniors on a regular basis, extremely low income, very low income, and low income at the Redwoods, 60-plus seniors who have affordable housing, who struggle every day to stay in those apartments and pay $300 and up in terms of rent. This can be done. We can make the kind of housing available that we need. And I guess I just want to close by sort of evoking Maya Angelou, who said, may she rest in peace, courage is the most important of all virtues, because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue consistently. So I think that we all need to come to the table in as time-sensitive a way as we can, listen to as many voices with as much courage as we can, and then move forward. We can't be stuck and mired in the devil that's in the details here forever. We're going to have to be somewhere in between. And I don't envy your positions. I have great respect for you all, and I'm with you. I don't intend to back out of the process or give up, even though I think probably most of us have thought at times, enough of this. But we're here. We're here as a community. We're not going away. We're going to figure it out with you. And thank you for what you've done to get us this far.
Thank you, Jody. Is there anybody else who would like to speak this evening? Come on up.
Hi, I'm Shannon Savage. I live on Porteous. I rent a room. I've lived in Fairfax. Sorry? A little louder. My name's Shannon Savage. I live on Porteous Ave. I rent a room. I've rented rooms in Fairfax for about 10 years now. I've also lived in Robin Hood Manor Apartments back when it was affordable. I'll never live in an apartment again here. It's not a very good quality of life experience. I work with a lot of the youth in town. I have for quite some time. In terms of my fiscal worth, I'm very, very low, but I feel extremely rich in many other ways in my life in this town. I participate in the local economy probably more than I should based on the income I make. But I think that I don't know if I'll end up staying here or if I'll end up going. I don't own property here, so in some ways maybe I don't really exist in this conversation maybe, but I think that I've put my shoulder to the wheel on a few projects and on a few local businesses, and that there are many, many really effective, amazing possibilities that could occur here. Last year at the Bike Works, we showed a documentary called Within Reach about a couple who bike tours around the country visiting various eco-villages and intentional communities and lots of agricultural spin-offs, and there's an incredible, incredible amount of wealth and potential and sophistication and minds that are all here together and poised and ready. And I think that the suggested developments seem well thought out, but that moving into the future, if we can all work together and communicate well, that there could be even more amazing developments that don't have to destroy the character of Marin or destroy the value of what people have worked so hard for who do own real estate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anybody else who would like to speak this evening? You know, as odd as it sounds, it's this conversation that we're having which is going to lead us down the path of conciliation and to resolve it eventually. The council does not have any action before tonight, and I of course, respect the right of all the council members to speak. But the one thing I sort of took away from tonight was, for myself personally, a moment of repose. So my sentiments, in all honesty, have not changed, but I don't want to further the which really is a schism now. So I look forward to the month before we gather again in July to reflect on all that I've heard tonight. I've sat through a lot of meetings over 8.5 years, and this one I certainly put in the top couple of very thoughtful and heartfelt concern from the community. So I will take a moment, a few weeks of repose, to think about everything you said and the notes that I took and your comments. And I look forward to coming back, as I know all of you will, in July for 2 meetings and a workshop to see how we resolve this difficult problem and do it in a way that reflects the best of our character and reflects the, I think, the nature of who we are as a community. But with that, I'll turn it over to any other council member who wishes to speak.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I mean, I think for all the polarized, I mean, this process is a very polarizing one and not
a fun one to be a part of course, I think for anybody. I mean, because a lot of people care about Fairfax. We live in a great community. A lot of people really care about it. It's a creative community, and I think that we owe it to ourselves to get to a place where we can move forward in a positive way. A lot of what I heard tonight was we need to slow down and get some things right. I think we rushed at the beginning of this process, and that was what led us to where we are right now. There are details that need to get ironed out in the general plan. I mean, every general plan has an errata page which fills up with the things that aren't right. And the reason why is because, you know, it's really thick, it's got a lot of details, and you need to get them right. The reason why we made the mistake was we tried to go too fast. And those details weren't dealt with, and it was just too big of a question for people to think about all the details and work them all out in the time that we had, which is why I voted to continue. In fact, moved to continue at first, but we didn't have the votes. In terms of Cascade Canyon School, that's one of the things. I mean, that conversation needs to happen. I mean, I don't think that there are plans that show how many parking places there are and exactly where those elder housing is going to be, and that needs to be there and talked about with the, you know, to get the support of the people in the school. I'm frankly kind of shocked that that hasn't been worked out. That's really something that, to not do that is to put the cart before the horse. I mean, I know there's a lot of legal hoops that you got to jump through and process hoops to get the money lined up for low housing development, but as a community, we have to work out those details in order to get broad community support and trust each other to all work in the same way. I mean, trust is one of the things that went out of the window when we moved too fast at the beginning of this process. Unfortunately, right now, we're in the middle of a legal process, which, you know, because of the referendum and the, you know, the writ and the back and forth, and what is really going to polarize things is to, I mean, no offense to the lawyers up here or in the room anywhere, if you deal with stuff as a legal issue and fight it out in the courts, the people who win are the lawyers and everybody else loses. I mean, it's just polarizing, it's expensive, and you know, you lose the moment of the right time to work together. Really, that's where we need to go. I mean, if we can all, you know, join together and hash it out and trust each other that we can move forward and deal with these details in the general plan, the various different details, is slow down, take the process a portion at a time. You know, and I think the Lutheran Church is the perfect place to begin. You know, if we're talking about Tenalima, really we've got to work out something that works there. And if we can't work out something that works there, we don't have I mean, there are no plans for that project. There is no project there. It's mainly a zoning and saying, oh, well, let's look at this area and see what works. Well, we need to do it slowly and in a way that works for the community, for the people who would work there. We have a very creative community, and I think we can come up with some really good ideas that work for the community. You know, I heard about something that sounded like co-housing. I've been a proponent. I worked decades ago with a group trying to get a co-housing thing together. That group actually finally came through and did it. I mean, my life changed, you know. I moved to Fairfax instead, in 91, instead of doing that co-housing project. And, you know, that would have been interesting to be a part of. I find Fairfax a pretty interesting place to be a part of, too. I love it here. You know, there's a bunch of different models of things to do. There are also some other ways to skin a cat that I have seen people working together with different planning departments in Marin County to see about dealing with. There's a bunch of houses that have an elderly couple living in it, and they're 3 or 4 bedrooms. You know, and they've got enough parking to support that many bedrooms. You know, why? And one of the I'm trying to remember the name of the thing. Basically, they use one of those bedrooms that has an outside entrance or put an outside entrance in, and then that room gets rented out to somebody, and the unit that the thing that they build is a very small building just outside of that bedroom that has a small kitchenette and, facilities so that person isn't living on top of the people in that house, but it gives the elders in that house a place to age in place and gives them support. That can be a caretaker that lives there, that can be somebody who shares in the rent, it can be a low-income type of housing thing. There's a lot of creative ways to solve the problem is what I'm trying to illustrate with that example. The legal process that's coming up for us, what with the writ, the answer to the writ, the thing that was alluded to at the beginning, I mean, that's a court case, and, whether that flawed initial, 778 gets rescinded or goes on the ballot, which is a very divisive and polarizing thing to go through. I don't know. There's a few people maybe that want to go there, but personally, I'd rather not fight about some detail or something that was done wrong. I'd rather say, look, let's do it right. Let's work together as a community and get this done so that we can all benefit as a community in the right way. So I would invite the people with referendum to work together with us as a council, and so we can move together and pull our community back together. That's really what needs to happen. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I think it was the longest serving member on the Affordable Housing Committee of all the members on the town council, and yet I was the one that moved to continue the ordinance 2 months ago, because I knew from my experience that when we take time to listen to the community, we make better decisions. And it's a little ironic that now that we're in the place we are, I think that realization has been reflected by everyone who's spoken, that we need to take our time, but we also need to move forward. I don't think putting this on the ballot and campaigning against one another for the next 6 months is going to move us forward. I think it's just going to divide us further, and it's going to make a group that thinks it's a winner and a group that thinks it's a loser, and that doesn't make for a good peace. That doesn't really result in a lasting peace. It doesn't result in lasting peace between nations, and I don't think it's going to result in lasting community here in Fairfax. So yeah, I am a lawyer, and I think in lawyerly terms, and the fastest way to move forward is to move backward and take a break on the ordinance, which we all know on the council is riddled with flaws. We've received detailed memoranda about those that we need to keep confidential. But there are flaws, and they aren't typos, they're substantive errors in the general plan. And I'm going to get into that in a minute with you all, because I tracked down one of the errors, and Valerie asked where it came from. It will be revealed shortly. But I think the other place where we fell short when we passed the ordinance in March was that we didn't honor the process. And I think, as far as my experience on the town council for the last 10 years, it's been about honoring process, because when we slow down, we make better decisions. We were not under any time constraints whatsoever when we took this up last March. We were not under the gun from the state. We were past the Chevron issue. We had passed a moratorium to prevent formula stores from moving into the the commercial highway zone. We were covered. And I still really don't understand why we moved forward, but we did, and now we are where we are. But in order to move the community forward, I do think we need to take a step back and take a look at it, because not only will we correct some of the errors, but we're going to move forward more quickly on the projects that we have consensus about, which I think starts with the Lutheran Church project by Cascade Canyon School. I sat through many site capacity studies, or at least a couple. We had an architect, Matthew Thompson, who our planning director lured up here from Santa Cruz at very low cost, and there are drawings of the proposed development. And one of the primary concerns that we had on the Affordable Housing Committee was to make sure that that housing corresponded with the school and was compatible with the school, and actually sort of communicated with the school structurally and as creating a new little neighborhood in there. But when we rushed through the zoning change, we blanket zoned the entire parcel, which is about a 20-acre parcel, for planned district development, which was what I would call over-zoning it. And of course, we didn't include any of the expectations of the stakeholders in that conversation, which was that it would be a sustainable housing and educational community that would correspond and communicate with each other structurally and as a neighborhood. That was lost when we did the zoning as we did it. We can get there if we do it right, but I don't think we did it right. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I think that precipitated a lot of distrust in the community and a feeling of disenfranchisement among the community. And they saw that they felt they needed to re-enfranchise themselves, which they're allowed to do under the California Constitution, Article 2, Section 9. That is a constitutional right, what those folks did. So this is no laughing matter. It's no light matter. That is the remedy that's provided under California law, and they took the path to pursue their remedies, which they have a constitutional right to do. Now, where we are now, we are in sort of a conflicted area where we've got the writ that's been filed is pending, and we're trying to figure out what to do now. I do think that the legal issue is going to need to get a little clarified, and I actually think we're on the path to do that. And I appreciate the advice that we've gotten in that regard. And I think the conciliatory tone that our town has taken in negotiating with the petitioners, I really do appreciate that. Because that's what we have to do in order to make this work. And that's what we have to do to work as a community. So, okay, the change, the mistake in the zoning density I tracked down was in the amendment to the housing element, which was sent out. We had a joint planning commission, affordable housing committee meeting in this town on August 27th, 2013. So this was a joint meeting. We were supposed to get a package, a packet with all the documents for that meeting, and what happened was that the housing element, and I'm going to find it in a second, so excuse me, was emailed to us before the meeting, and it has the track changes in the document where the zoning was incorrectly calculated for the UR10 and UR7 zones. So UR10 is Wall, UR7 is, among others, Sky Ranch, which is now in contract to be purchased as open space. Both of those zones were the density in both of those zones was miscalculated in those track changes. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to find the document, and I can show it to you. And I'm going to just leaf through this. I want to keep talking so I don't lose my flow. I just want to tell you something once I find it. What's interesting about the whole thing, I don't know why the calculations were, I don't know why the density was miscalculated. It was miscalculated to 0.25 housing units per acre for both UR7 and UR10. I mean, I don't know why that happened, but what's interesting, what I find interesting about that whole process is that the document was reviewed by the Planning Commission, by the Affordable Housing Committee, by the Town Council, and nobody picked it up until Frank found it when he went through the housing element and found it. So that's just, I really respect everybody that's done so much work on this, but nobody's perfect. And I think that the way that whole error sort of came down through consultants, through staff, through planning, through affordable housing, through the town council, and it wasn't until the night we were going to adopt the ordinance that it came out, that there was a miscalculation. And it had been there for 6 months. So nobody's perfect. The housing element, it is a great document, but it wasn't chiseled in stone. It wasn't handed down on a mountain. It came from us. And I think we have to have a little humility about that. We get decisions up here that get appealed from the Planning Commission. This whole thing came down from an appeal from the Planning Commission about the Chevron station. So that was another 11th hour type of appeal that came down. It went through great minds on the Planning Commission and thoughtful minds, but it was changed at the last minute after a lot of money and a lot of time had been put into it. Staff had recommended approval of that project, and you know what? We found out there were some real problems with that project, and we had some real problems with our town code, among which were that we hadn't passed an ordinance to actually enact the general plan. And enacting something is a lot different than writing policy. Legislating law is a separate process from writing policy. And that's where we are now. We're in a separate process. And as I look forward to go through that process, my desire is to get it done. And I don't think we're going to get it done by putting it on the ballot in November and politicizing it and dividing ourselves. I think we got to take a step back to do that. And we started that process when we directed staff to begin the repeal process, because we can't repeal an ordinance by just snapping our fingers up here. Had to go through the Planning Commission. They disagreed with us. Well, I'm just saying, as somebody that's been here for 10 years, has worked on affordable housing for 4 or 5 years, we got to take a step back if we want to take a step forward. Because we may step forward, but we're going to run into each other. unless we take that step back and take our time. And the only way I can see accomplishing that is by repealing the ordinance and by making a commitment. And I'll take the challenge that Lou threw down. We take it up piece by piece, beginning with the Lutheran Church project, which all of us seem to have some feeling of support and even reverence for. That's a good project, good organization. It's got some momentum going. You got a school there. This could be a beautiful thing for this town. Let's not let it slip through our fingers by insisting that we're right and they're wrong. So I just don't see any other way of doing this other than taking that step back to take the step forward. And here's the track change, not to disappoint you. It is in the revised draft of the housing element. It's dated July of 2013. It's on page H15. And there are the track changes. And I'll pass this out. I can tear this out. There they are. And all of us missed it. We're human, just like you, except we get to sit up here. I think it takes a lot more courage to sit down there and talk to us, really. But there it is. And that got emailed to us a few days before the meeting. We went right along our merry way, and here we are. I think that our PDD chapter that we've got under Fairfax Code will move this project forward. So we start there, we move forward with that. We go to Tanalima, and then I think we have to take a look at the CH to CC change. I think that's kind of a big one. As much as I support affordable housing, there are no affordable housing set-asides in that zoning change. So the CH to CC, there's no affordable housing set-asides in that zone. Now, maybe when we take it up again, we can do that. Maybe when we take it up again, we can put some language in there that will create some set-asides for affordable housing, because they're not there now. They are not there now. The only two affordable housing sites in this plan are Tanalima and Lutheran Church site. The other sites, there's no affordable housing. Now, maybe we can do that. Maybe we can add some language that exempts that area of zoning from SB 743, which actually exempts many of these projects from CEQA, which one of our speakers mentioned earlier about the value of CEQA. Our friends in Sacramento have carved CEQA away from some of these projects. So we are not protected by CEQA. I believe that we can make some findings here in Fairfax which will protect us from that pernicious law. So I think we can improve what we've done, but we got to have the humility to step back before we do it. And I think if we can get a consensus on going forward by taking the step back, we will get it done. We can move it forward. It shouldn't take months because we've got the bones of an excellent plan and we've got the community to do it, and let's get it done.
Okay, Barbara?
I'll keep my comments brief. Just to mention that I am also a member of the Affordable Housing Committee, and I also sit on the Countywide Community Development Block Grant Committee, which is where a lot of these projects, affordable housing projects, started. Peace Village has been allocated a significant amount of funding. one of the innovative housing solutions that was mentioned, we already have here in Fairfax, and that was funded through that committee. The Vest Pocket Community is an innovative shared housing project. So there are a number of projects. I think a couple of people also talked about the Fairfax San Anselmo Children's Center that was also funded through that. But as I said in the prior meeting, I was out of the deliberations until April. I received advice from our legal counsel that I felt I needed to recuse myself, and working with the California Fair Political Practices Commission, received new information and a legal opinion which now allows me to participate. So, as I said before, what we see is a really divided community, and this isn't where we should be. I don't think this is about affordable housing or not affordable housing. I think people are talking a lot about this like we're not, that neither side, one side is for affordable housing, another side isn't. I don't see that. What I see is really a need to step back and do it right. And that's what we talked about and directed staff to move forward on, is to take a step back. So it disturbs me that people are being painted as being against affordable housing, or that affordable housing will not happen if we were to rescind this and start in the stepwise process. I think we can move forward in a positive way and take it piecemeal. But I think both sides need to be willing to work together, and that includes the folks on the side that put together and signed the referendum. I think we all need to work together collaboratively to do this in a piecemeal fashion, and I think everybody's pretty clear that we want to start with the Lutheran Church. I think it's really a mistake to go to the ballot and further divide our community. I think Lou Tremaine's comments really resonated to me, and I think many of you. We don't need to be here. We don't need to be divided. I think we can move forward. We have the structure in Ordinance 778, but I think we need to step back from that and really look at things in a piecemeal process and do it right this time, and make sure that there aren't mistakes which cause mistrust and confusion and really don't get us where we need to be. So I'm certainly a supporter of affordable housing. I'd like to see us move forward, but I'd like to see us to move forward quickly, but really do things in a piecemeal fashion and make sure we do it right, collaborating with the community. And I agree to, rather than charrettes where people are broken up into smaller groups and then we come together, that we do it as one workshop. And I think that's what the mayor has proposed, and we plan to do is one big workshop. So thank you, everyone. I heard a lot on both sides that really meant a lot to me, and I'm going to do as David said and think more about what everybody said, and I took copious notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Renee?
Yeah, thank you all so much. I will say very honestly, I'm overwhelmed, and the expressions on both sides of this situation are compelling and thoughtful, and I respect each and every one for coming up and speaking. Now I have to speak. And I'm not going to speak long because I do have a lot to consider here, and I have also taken copious notes. I appreciate everything that Larry said tonight and each of my fellow council members very much. But there is something that Lou Tremaine said, and I'm going to come in to just kind of respond to what he said as if I were brand new. And new, I'm starting to feel, is becoming sort of judged as not wise or not in tune with what we are as Fairfax. And I'm going to stand strong that there's a lot of new here. And what this plan has been about is innovation creating new opportunity, and opportunity being the operative word. Because without providing for opportunity, and you guys have heard all the code languaging, the general plan, how it's worded, how we made mistakes moving forward, the confusion. Nonetheless, what the housing element draws for us and what the ordinance to approve the zoning map is merely a roadmap for new opportunity. We've heard from at least half the folks that showed up here that there is need for new. And in order for us to actually provide that possibility, and I'm talking in all these, not specific kinds of ways, because the specifics are intensely complex, as you've heard. We have to be willing to not go back, but not dive forward. So I'm going to differ with Larry, and I'm going to say that I think we can stand where we are with an intention and commitment to not further divide. Because I do believe that everything that's been brought to our attention can be fixed. In fact, all the studying I can do has shown me that amendments to this plan and this element can take place 4 times a year. I heard the mayor say, now in the very beginning, now if this were something we were stamping and setting in stone, then I would be very weary of doing this. In fact, my 15-year-old son asked me the same thing. Is this like the final thing? And it's not. And what I have had trouble with in all of this, besides sort of the personal divisions that are taking place in this very cohesive, unique community with a history of community process being civil, like innovative, creation-oriented, if you will, is being obstructed by, and I'm just going to take a different take of what Lou said. He said, this is not us, or this is us. What did he say? Someone remember? That's important. I want to do that right. Sorry. Give me 1 second here. He said, this is us. Okay. I go back. So I'm not quite sure that everybody in this community knows what us is. And I'm not sure that everybody in this room, and especially some of the folks that are saying, I'm struggling, I can't get in here, I've always wanted to be one of us, but I can't. So please provide opportunity for me and teach me what us is. I personally, as a newer council member, have not really been privy to the us. I thought that I had done a lot of work in the community with all kinds of different of the folks that are standing on all sides of this. I still don't feel like us. And I would like further explanation by a coming to the table without any further threats, without feeling as though we are being forced to come to the table and let's redefine us. Let's look at this plan without scrapping it. I don't believe in piecemeal. It doesn't mean I don't want to save or prioritize projects to make sure we don't put them in jeopardy. But it does take this whole community feeling invited to the table. And the recent things that have taken place have alienated folks, have confused folks, have taken things into a language that no one understands, and we obviously, given what we experienced before, have not worked very well with translation. I really think that we need to start there, and that is that we need to break down the language and not have only the few that have been privy to having written and understanding the code from the very minutia of being able to find that error in the tables. I honor and respect and thank you for finding it, but the way in which it's been brought to us in the form of potentially damaging litigation to this town is not showing me a positive map forward. I really would request that we relook at how this moves forward and commit to a civil process without the threats and without the costs that this town is incurring in legal fees, frankly. So thank you again. I will consider everything that everyone said. I look forward to coming back and hearing, and I look forward to everyone coming to the table, and that means all the people who have no idea what's going on here in their name. So, thank you.
Thank you all very much. July 2nd, I'll see you back here. Before we leave, we have to, it's way after 10 o'clock, we have to decide what we're going to do. Might I recommend that we have to do 22 and 23? We put 24, 25, 27, I don't even know what we do with 8, off to the next meeting. I'm thinking number 26, Larry, is probably going to be you. That can be so quick. So that's going to be, we'll do that. So if the council's pleasure, I would say that we jettison 24, 25, 27, and 8 until we gather again in July. Is that okay?
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
25 is the residents' petition. They've been waiting around. What are you going to do?
I'm sorry. We're just not going to sit here all night after Measure I and Mira and doing a noise ordinance. Bob Stempel, I'm sorry. Can't do it. I'm sorry. We cannot attend to the noise ordinance this evening. We will have to pick that up in July. I know that you've hung in there, and I apologize for not being able to bring it, but it's going to be a long conversation, and this council has 2 other matters that are... So please extend our apologies to the neighborhood, and we will certainly take it up in July.
Yeah, I was going to be the only one here. So I was going to be the only one here.
Okay. We still apologize. It's okay. All right, with that, do I have approval on that? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
All right, we've had a request to flip Measure I and Mira because the Mira guys have been here a long time, and since there's very little public, and since we have sat through a very good presentation, just a couple of months ago, the question for the council is, do you want to flip these things, and do we want to hear the full presentation that they have? Most of which we've seen and digested, and do we want to sit through it again, or do we want to go straight toward a conversation? Okay, I have the request from Council Member Kohler to go straight to a conversation among ourselves on this, and you're here if we have to bring you into the conversation. So let's pick up, for those watching on television, Number 23, adoption of a resolution supporting and endorsing a proposed County of Marin parcel tax as the funding mechanism for the second generation Mira public safety communications system. Garrett, do you want to give us a very short presentation on this?
Actually, if it would be appropriate, I'd like to invite Mr. Jeffries to do
Very
that.
short, maybe just a few minutes?
Certainly. My name is Dave Jeffries. I'm the project manager for Mira. I appreciate the opportunity to come back and speak with you. This is building on the presentation we did last year. We promised we'd be back, and here we are. Essentially, the situation hasn't changed. We're still looking at the same basic reasons why we need to replace the system. The Mira governing boards and executive boards decided late last year and approved our feasibility study as well as the funding mechanism we are pursuing, in that we're looking for the parcel tax based on the $29 single-family residence rate that's in the staff report I know you have. The one change you've seen in the staff report compared to my first presentation is that we have projected in the graphs what it would look like if we'd use a process called smoothing, where during the years where both bonds are being funded, we do interest only as opposed to paying the bond out evenly over 20 years. It takes out that hump over 6 years, but it just pushes the principal payments back into the remaining 14 years. And you can clearly see in the graphs the dichotomy between the impact on Mira agencies should the parcel tax be successful or be unsuccessful. With that, I know you've digested the report. I know it's been a long evening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The presentation that we have prepared essentially follows the staff report, so you have that information in front of you.
Do we have any questions as follow-up? Seeing...
The town, I guess, is paying $44,000 a year from the town budget towards Mira.
And you're referring to the figures we provided in the staff report. So on these briefly, and I made the comment in the staff report, in terms of Generation 1 bonds, we're comfortable with those costs. With the operating and maintenance costs, I do have to emphasize those are estimates that Public Works has come up with.
No, well, hold on a second. Okay, right now, I think Mira is getting $44,000 a year from our town budget.
Yeah.
Is it more than that?
Yeah, it's actually two. You pay the membership and you pay the debt service, and we're budgeting $80,000.
Oh, it's $80,000.
It's 80, and we
Okay,
split it between PD and Public Works.
Okay, so then...
And that's a combination of the bond and the operating and maintenance
Okay,
costs.
so it's $80,000 a year out of our budget.
That's correct.
That's okay. So that's my question, because if we go to a $29 per parcel tax, and there's about 3,500 parcels in Fairfax, okay, so that's about $105,000 a year. So it's less of an increase than I thought, but it's an increase. So what's
Well,
why?
the
What's
parcel
the extra
tax is a
money for?
countywide parcel tax, and we're
Right.
looking at funding the system generically across the county.
Right.
But at the same time, also understand that, the county's use, same parcel tax coming out of Fairfax is helping pay for the county's operation here in the area, and Ross Valley Fire has a piece to this, and so adding all these agencies up would take a little bit of time. But the idea of the parcel tax is to evenly spread the cost around the county. There are different rates for multifamily housing, agriculture, industry. But we believe with the figures we have, we can take care of the system and take care of the capital costs. The operating and maintenance is an expense that would continue regardless. We saw little public support for including operating and maintenance into the parcel tax, and that's not part of the proposal.
So our budget piece is still going to go forward?
Right. So
Wow.
I think how it works, if I understand, is right now we pay debt service for the existing system, and we pay O&M costs. If the parcel tax were to pass, what happens is rather than the town paying the debt service, it just gets shifted directly to the property owners. So the town is only responsible for paying the ongoing maintenance costs, with the one caveat that we still need to continue to finish off paying the debt service for the Gen 1 system. The original system, which expires, that payment is another, I forget
August
where.
of 2020.
2120?
Fiscal year 2021.
Fiscal year 2120, the debt service for the existing system would expire. Then you would continue with O&M for the new system. Assuming the new system gets the parcel tax, then that gets paid directly by property owners, not by the town. If it fails, if it were to fail, then presumably the town, assuming all the entities believe the Gen 2 system is necessary, would then have to pay for the debt service itself, and that would come out of the general fund budget.
And Garrett, do you have an estimate what that would be?
Yeah, I think the estimate is if it fails would be $145,000 a year is the combination debt service and O&M costs to the town in 22-23. It's a little odd because the bond measure presumes that it's interest only for the first few years, and then it gets fully amortized. So in essence, if it fails, pretty much in 15-16, we start paying $127,000, and in fiscal year 22-23, you start paying roughly $145,000. So it's a big chunk if we have to pay it directly, assuming all the members assume that we need the system and we go forward and
It may
finance
help
it.
on page 8 of the staff report we provided. I have the figures are in there that we've developed locally for your agency.
Okay.
And it lays out the difference each year in the different models.
Okay.
So I have a, oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
So, okay, I read this whole thing, and a couple things. So right now we're paying roughly $80,000 a year. If I understand you correctly, through 2021, we're still going forward paying $80,000 a year plus O&M costs for Gen 2, right? So let's assume this passes.
If I may, the 80,000 includes O&M.
Okay,
So
but
the
that's
80,000 is not just the Gen 1. The 80,000 is Gen 1 and operating and maintenance. The Gen 1 piece is about 47.
Okay, so when does, okay, right now we're paying 80,000 a year for Gen 1 and O&M, and you're saying Gen 1 is 47,000. At what point do we get to Gen 2? Isn't that 2018 or something?
So 2018 is when we expect to have the Gen 2 system
Right.
active.
So-
But the bonds would start being sold in 2015 to pay for the development of the project.
So when do we stop paying the 47,000 for Gen 1?
So that payment the last payment would be during fiscal year 2021.
So we're still going forward paying 47,000 for Gen 1 that goes through 2021. What are the O&M costs that we would start paying? I'm assuming we would pay for O&M for Gen 1 through 2018, starting until Gen 2 gets in place. What are the estimates of O&M costs for Gen 2? I would bet there'd be more.
So what Public Works did is they didn't break O&M between the two systems. The O&M expenditures that they estimate are for the system in general. So in the initial years, the O&M is simply for the first system. Then there's going to be a brief period of time we have to keep both systems up and running as we get the Gen 2 system up and tested and then start transitioning units to that system. Once we moved everybody over, we'll shut down the Generation 1 system and the O&M continues for Gen 2. A couple things about the Gen 2 system. Initially it'll be new parts, but then at the same time we're trying to keep the old system going till we finish with transition. The new system is proposed to be larger with 4 additional sites, so we're also maintaining a bigger system at that point. But if you look at the O&M estimates...
What page are you on?
It should be page 8 of the MERA staff report. Depending on what printers, sometimes it's moved one page.
Yeah, it's fine. It's on page 8.
So what I'm talking about, the table C, just above the middle of the page, are the total O&M estimates from Marin Public Works, and this is not broken down between the two gens. It's just their estimates going through the years to maintain both systems as we move forward.
Okay, so starting FY 17-18, it says 47,000, which is the current cost, and then there's a modest increase of about 5,000 on top of that starting in 18-19, which you're saying will be Gen 1 and Gen 2 together?
And then you'll notice the next year it drops just a touch.
Uh-huh.
And so in that period, there's some piece of that where we're trying to maintain both systems. Now with the Gen 2 system being new, of course, it's more of the routine maintenance that goes on all the time with the system, but it certainly should be less significant repairs. With the Gen 1 system, it'll be right there at the end of its life, but we need to have both systems running until we transition everybody. And again, this Gen 2 system is bigger than the one we have now, which is going to, not only is it more expensive, it has more sites, and it's going to require more O&M down the road because it's bigger.
So when I look at 2021, instead of our 80,000, we'd be paying about 100,000, right?
Correct. So if I can explain, Table D there is assuming the parcel tax passes.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I get that.
So yeah, you'll see a drop
so
off there.
we go from 80,000 to about 100,000 a year, and then for some reason after that, it goes 21, 22, it goes to 55,000.
That's because the Gen 1 bonds will have been paid off.
Okay, so then we can only hope for 21, 22 because our annual investment would be about 55,000.
Yes, that would be in just the operating and maintenance at that point.
Okay, and is there any attempt to sell off any of the Gen 1 equipment?
Well, in some cases, we're hoping to try to reuse things like buildings and towers.
Well, that I understand, but the other part of the equipment you could sell off to...
Potentially. There's some challenges in the system. This is a UHF band system, and all of those frequencies are being taken back in 2021, if you recall that part of the presentation.
Right.
But certainly, as our equipment becomes surplus, MERA already has a process for trying to deal with surplus property. Now, how much we get for it at that point, I would hate to estimate at this point. But if there are things that we can get some return on, we certainly will try. But I don't know what those parts would be at this point. I don't know what the value would be at that point. We're in the process now of essentially doing that with other counties where we're trying to buy replacement parts as they upgrade they may help make sure we can keep our system running through 2018. So whatever market there is, certainly I don't think there'd be any objection to trying to resell whatever we have left over.
And another thing I recall was that Gen 2, by law, really should be up and running by 2017, so we're going to be like a year behind. Is that correct?
That particular piece there's been a change there in that the chronology of this is the FCC passed the technology requirement that you're talking about. Then later, Congress passed and the President signed a separate bill that says we're taking these frequencies back and selling them. So we just recently learned the FCC has suspended the requirement you're talking about, and the order language is very specific. It basically, I'll paraphrase, since we're taking the frequencies away from you anyway, there's no point in making you invest in the technology upgrade because you're losing those channels.
Okay.
So in one sense, it's a slight improvement, but it doesn't make me feel any better because their argument is very clear. We're taking the frequencies away from you.
And what's your estimate on the life of Gen 2?
Public Works has estimated that systems of these kind, they're looking at 15 to 20 years. And so if you look at selling bonds in 2015, activating the system in 2018, if you split the 15 to 20 years, basically the 18 years that we'd expect the system to run basically lines up with the end of the bond payments. But there is one thing that we briefly mentioned in round one, and it's mentioned in here too, and that's the idea of a service upgrade agreement, where for additional operating and maintenance costs, we can have the vendor come in and upgrade technologies every couple of years for the first 10 years, which we strongly believe will help us with that second 10-year window if we've had upgrades through the first half of the system.
Okay, and so obviously not to recreate the wheel, but I've got a question. Did anybody ever consider just leasing the equipment rather than an outright purchase? Because typically you can upgrade a lot more effectively when you're leasing. I mean, I did this kind of stuff before on a smaller scale, and we really found that leasing was so much more beneficial because you're not investing in all this equipment that you have to maintain, and you really cut down the costs that way. Any thoughts to that? I know this is 11th hour.
Well, and a lot of the early conversations started back in 2009 and 2010. And at that point, I wasn't involved in the project at this end, so I'm not aware of conversations like that. I know we have a finance committee that's been heavily involved in looking at all the different alternatives. I can certainly try to ask that question and get back to the chief and share that information with you, but I don't have an answer to that this evening.
Yeah, that would be great, because really, we've seen so many investments in infrastructure, such as the county computer system. All these investments in infrastructure, you've got to maintain them, and it'd be nice to just kind of put that off on somebody else through a lease type agreement.
I thoroughly understand. I've been involved with Novato's portion of the CAD system, the RMS system, the radio system. I get it.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Can I ask one more question? Oh, sorry, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I highly support asking those questions about leasing equipment. I mean, one of the things that I've been told anyway about the Gen 1 system is by the time it was up and running, it was already could be called obsolete,
I think
because
that's
of the
an unfair
technology
characterization.
evolves. Yeah, I mean.
But
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the radio I was issued when we first went live is the same radio I retired with.
Yeah. So, be that as it may, I mean, this is just something that I was told, and I didn't research into the validity of the claims or anything. But, we all know how fast computers change and technologies change, and we can see what's happening with the FCC and things like that, but I think a leasing approach, obviously, you're going to cover somebody else's costs there, but with the rates at which technology does seem to change and evolve, I mean, I think it's definitely worth exploring that.
Well, like I said, I will try to get an answer back to you. I know at this point, so the Mayor's Governing Board has made the decision we need to move forward. We will be seeking the Board of Supervisors to put this on the November ballot because we firmly believe we need to start the project next year and we need to have a solid funding source. But I will try to get back to you on that question.
It seems to me that we have a suite of questions for you. Might I suggest to the council, because we do have Measure I, and I hate to cut anybody off, but we do have to get to Measure I, and it's approaching 11 o'clock. Perhaps we could forward our questions to you, and then you could write back to us comprehensively.
Yes, and I would ask, because we're trying to get ready for the Board of Supervisors presentation, we're trying to wrap all of these up by, I think our last presentation is June 23rd. This is our 19th presentation. The other 18 agencies have approved the resolution.
Yep. I mean, I just wanted to express my concerns, David. I think that one's an important one, especially because some of the polling doesn't reach it up to the majority that you need. And to have that question in front of the public and have that taken, that safety net, I mean, I think that's important to get it to pass.
It has not been a common question. It's the first time I've had that question in 2 rounds of doing these, but we'll get an answer back to you.
Okay, well, sometimes if it's not for the last minute, as we've
Again, I don't mean to rush anybody, but our most important tax measure at 11 o'clock. Are there any other questions, or can we go to a motion? Oh, we have to go to the public. Larry, go ahead.
As far as the additional sites, you're talking about a transmission site?
Transmission site, tower type thing, or?
Yes, and depending on where they get located, in some cases, we are using existing towers and co-locating our equipment on them. In other cases, like in Mill Valley, that one of our current sites is on one of their buildings, so it doesn't look as big as a mountaintop site. But we're generally looking at 2 more sites in West County and 2 sites in South County. No, like the coverage issues we have are really down along the coast in the south end of the county, as well as West County.
Okay, so as far as you know, the new towers are not planned for Fairfax?
I have not heard any discussion of any additional towers going into the Fairfax area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any member of the public, or one of you, interested in speaking? No? We'll bring it back to council then, if it's the council's pleasure. A motion, please.
I'd move to continue it to our next meeting.
I think Mr. Jeffries is requesting, it sounds like he's going to the Board of Supervisors when again? I'm sorry.
July 22nd, and we're trying to make sure we're prepared.
So if the council took action on July 2nd, does that work?
Yes, and the question would be, do you need us here for that night or not?
No.
That's kind of a personal thing. My son's in from Georgia that week, so I'm hoping to spend some time with him.
Sounds like we'll go it alone.
Okay.
Okay, well, why are we putting this off?
Because I think we wanted to get some answers to questions before we voted on approving the financing.
What questions were you going to get back to us on?
Leasing? I was told they'd be, well, the leasing was one, and I was told there might be some more emailed to me.
Okay, so it's one and the potential for others. Okay, well, thanks for coming and
entirely
sitting around all night. We'll take this up again on July 2nd and hopefully get you an answer.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. We are now at item number 22. Some introductory comments. So this is the conversation we're going to have, our workshop in front of no one, except for the one woman in the back, and thank you for staying, to discuss and consider the extension of the special municipal services tax for 5 years and direct staff as appropriate. It's interesting. Folks will know on their tax bill when they review it that there are 2 bills, there are 2 taxes that are somewhat akin to one another because they have more or less the same name. One is the special municipal services tax, which we call Measure I, at $125 per parcel. And then there's an old, dating back to 1983, municipal services tax of $50. The Measure I, if you will, the 125, has been passed generously by the community on 2 occasions. The municipal services tax, however, is one that was passed by the voters and is an older type of tax that does not get reviewed on a periodic basis by the residents. And there's been a real progression in the law since Prop 13, and we've been very fortunate that our legal counsel, and particularly her law firm, which has a vast array of attorneys who are able to burrow into tax issues with great attention, have sort of with an abundance of caution suggested to us that municipal services tax has outlived its day, and that as we go forward with Measure I and this conversation we're having this evening, that we consider taking that $50 and folding it into the one, adding it in a sense to Measure I and adding it to the 125. And to that end, the council is not going forward with the municipal services tax of $50 at all. We did have to bring it before the council every year, and we are not doing it this year, so it's going to sunset and go away. However, the need for the generous tax revenue continues, and it is in that vein that we will seek to have a conversation about the 125 and the $50. And so with that, Garrett, would you like to lead us in a short staff report?
Sure. Maybe one suggestion. I know it's 11 o'clock, but you do have a budget workshop on Friday, and I think there's enough time there so where you could actually continue this discussion more there as opposed to this time of night.
Brilliant idea. Hopefully members of the public will attend the budget workshop and can share some thoughts in addition.
Well, we have time, though, for Michelle to notice it, to include that item?
Yes, actually the budget workshop is fairly generic, but what we'll do is we'll just schedule today's only Wednesday, so we'll schedule a special meeting to coincide, and this one item to coincide in the middle of the workshop.
Question, and I don't know if it's any easier for you guys to find it, but to calculate what the Bay Area cost of living increase has been since 2005 to now, just so we can have something to kind of correlate what we're talking about here.
Sure, we'll bring that on Friday.
That really makes sense as a yardstick.
Just to have an idea.
I mean, the one thing, David, if we just quickly touch on, we have quickly touched on rolling that other $50 tax into this and making it all at once so the voters have a thing is, we are televised right now. I don't know that Friday in the middle of the day is an opportune. Yeah, I don't think that's going to be. So I think it's important for the public to, really know that is one of the things that we're talking about doing that. I know that in the earlier workshop we were talking about various different other, it's basically a cost of living increase that we're talking about with, looking at Measure F, now Measure I, and seeing what it's been at a fixed level for the last 10 years. And, the price of everything is going up, and it's certainly for very popular things. I mean, our youth programs, matching funds for, crosswalks and sidewalks and that sort of thing. We've helped to fix bridges, potholes in the roads. It's right now is our opportunity to speak to people. That's what I'm saying.
Well, if you take the 125 and you add the 50, we're at 175.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's the same place where we were 10 years ago.
You're exactly right. The question is one of, if you will, optics. People will be going into the ballot booth or their kitchen table and looking at that and going, oh, it's 175. If you add on to that, okay. Do you cross the Rubicon above $200? How if you will, I hate to be crass about it, but the selling of the measure is challenging in challenging times, and when you cross over a certain threshold, it becomes very hard.
Oh yeah.
So
I understand. I hear you. I mean, that's the danger of rolling these two taxes together, is it looks like more, even though it's the same thing that people have been paying all along. But I thought that this opportunity with, perhaps some people all getting too tired to watch us now, that's fine, but, perhaps there are some people and they can give us some feedback.
I also wonder, can I just ask, when we had the Measure I workshop and members of the public came, I think there were, how many members? 20 people attended the meeting, and there was a discussion on this, and could you remind me of what the amount that they considered would be a reasonable increase?
The conversation that we were having, and of course it was before this one, was the debate, and I remember phrasing it and asking them to have a chat across the side fence with their neighbors. We were thinking 125, should we go to 150 or to 160? So we were thinking of a $25 or $35 increase.
And that's a cost of living In effect.
In effect.
Yeah, and then earlier tonight, we heard a pitch from a number of people around the trails saying for $10 a month, you get somebody who's actively actually $10 a year, you get somebody who's actively working to maintain and promote our trails.
At our thing, I recall there was some folks, Patty Brightman, and people from, talking about the REST program and the MOC and stuff that's going on homelessness issues, and I thought they were passionate on that issue. And then there was also the question of maybe it was me that brought up segregating part of the funds off for open space. So there were a confluence of, God, you could only wish you could fund all of them.
Well,
sort of issues.
that's true, and some people would find some of them more valuable than others, but
I have a suggestion.
I guess that's a call we've got to make.
Cindy Swift has been sitting in the audience, and she may want to speak on this, but one of the things perhaps that when we take this up on Friday, along with considering how it should be increased, I think we should talk about the length of time, because it doesn't necessarily have to be 5 years. It could be longer if there is no statutory requirement that we stop at 5 years, so we may need to discuss that as well. But I think if Ms. Swift wanted to speak on this item tonight, since she's been patiently waiting, we should allow her to do so. Great, thank you.
Bring friends. It gets a little lonely. Are there any other thoughts that we wish to express on camera now, or do we want to save them? One of the things that, Garrett, that you can do on this, and I think it was your email which prompted me, and I know that I responded to you on this, which is maybe, I know I don't want to add a second of work to your workday, but on these budget issues as we go through them, maybe you want to blog this one up. Since it won't be televised and folks won't have the benefit of watching it and making their own assumptions about our discussion, perhaps you could provide some blog attention to this, because this is a major issue for folks. Any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I think it's about educating people, and especially when we've got this rolling in of the general tax with the special tax. So I think it's really educating people, pinpointing the numbers, and showing them their current tax bill and what it would that there would not be the difference that appears in the number before them on that ballot measure.
That's a really good idea. If you want, you can have my tax bill, choke on it, and then show what's coming and going, adding and subtracting off of it.
Whatever. I just think we need to educate people about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So.
Yeah, a lot of it is in the argument in the ballot pamphlet. So.
Yeah.
Are we done? All right. See. Oh yeah. 26 to designate council members to sign the ballot argument to prepare the signed rebuttal for the Ross Valley Paramedic Authority ballot measure regarding an increase to the paramedic service tax. Larry.
Okay, so I thought I'm our rep. I would like to sign it. I talked to Jody Timms. I think she should sign it because the paramedic service is a big benefit to the elder community. That's what it does. It is providing paramedicine, emergency medicine. 80% of fire calls are medical calls. So the fire service is evolving into a paramedical service, and I think once the Affordable Care Act kicks in, that's going to provide some coverage, maybe, so that when a paramedic comes out and provides help but doesn't transport, there may be some reimbursement under the Act. So it really is not quite the barefoot doctor, but it's kind of it's community medicine. So it's a great program, great agency. I think Frank should sign it. I think We should have, I think we have a local physician, Michelle, now I can't remember her last name, who had.
Michelle
Perot. Would be great as an MD, and I'm open to suggestions.
Why don't you just round up a bunch of folk and
That's, I'm good.
Good. Okay then. We have, I'll take a motion to designate Vice Mayor Bragman to round up the usual suspects and some unusual
So
ones.
moved.
Second.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're out of here.
Second.
See you at
Friday.
What, Michelle?
So that's the arguments for, and then also Councilmember Bragman's authorized to sign the rebuttal?
Absolutely.
Or prepare the rebuttal?
Absolutely.
Prepare and sign the rebuttal and round up the usual suspects?
Yes.
Okay, got it.